Hello and welcome to The Hill Is Always Greener, a show where four friends have chill discussions about Sonic the Hedgehog to distract themselves from the inevitable passage of time and their own rapidly waning ability to relate to the youth, even though there's a new Sonic game that we're going to be talking about today, and now we have to try and sort of connect to the youth a little bit by talking about it. Whoa, Sonic. Anyway, how is everyone?
Doing pretty swell, man.
I'm here.
Reaching.
Yeah, reaching.
Reaching is all we do on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm Faulerro, by the way.
I'm RockTheJake.
I'm CyberLink.
And I'm GameBuddy. We made it.
Yeah, we made it to another episode of the podcast.
We made it to what's probably going to end up being one of our biggest episodes yet.
It might not be too short, I'm afraid. Sorry, everyone. We've got to talk about a big topic. But, it's kind of weird, actually. This is we're going to be talking about a modern Sonic game that we really like. It's strange, but a welcome experience.
This is the first mainline game to be released since we started this podcast.
Yeah, that's true.
Dang,
Oh my goodness.
That way.
You didn't have to say that.
I did anyway.
I guess you're welcome, everyone. The people that like Frontiers. I'm going to take credit for that.
Yeah, that's us.
We're in the universe where we started a podcast and we got a pretty good Sonic game, so yeah.
You know.
It was all us. Please make sure to send us PayPal donations at money.com.
Just bear in mind, the reason that there were issues with Sonic Origins is also due to us, but, you know, it was a sacrifice we had to make. I'm sorry, everyone.
Yeah.
You got to balance those scales somehow.
We looked through all of the possible futures, and it was the only way. But hey, that turned out all right in the end.
But what we have here is we're talking about Sonic Frontiers, by the way, in case we didn't make that clear. That is now we say the new Sonic game. It's not actually even new anymore by the time we're recording this, let alone by the time you're hearing this. As usual, we're not jumping on the hot trend and talking about it immediately for clicks, to our own detriment, it seems. But it's fine, because I'm quite happy to talk about this in a measured way a while after I finish playing it.
And I'm willing to bet that by the time this comes out, is they jumping all the way to the end of the show that Sega announced that, hey, they are releasing post-game content for Sonic Frontiers throughout the rest of this year. So yeah. it is relevant and will continue to be.
Absolutely. Just like Sonic Spin Dash, it's all cyclical.
So Sonic Frontiers, eh?
Yeah.
It's hard to know where to start because there is so much to talk about with this game.
Well, I thought the best thing would just be to kind of, not really delve into the dev history, because I feel like people have probably already done that or haven't done that already, as far as like, give it some time. I'm sure we'll learn more about like their process of, hey, we did Sonic Forces, now it's time to start working on the next thing, and how that turned out. We had the what was it, the Sonic Rangers leak and
Rangers.
the leaked what was it, like focus testing they did that, just on text from some admittedly like famously cynical, mean sources talking about how much like the Psyloop sucked and the combat was bad and
really dismissive. I remember that.
Yeah. And so by the time we got like the first trailer, it was like, well, I guess we'll see. And I'm sure everyone will remember like the Frontiers game footage, summer of game footage, where they started with a really weird like non-linear like 12 minutes of exploration with no one narrating, explaining what's going on, and then right after that they released like 2 gameplay videos about like, here's how the open world works, here's how cyberspace works, here's the combat. And it's like, wow, y'all really should have like reversed those, like explained what was what we were looking at before just throwing raw footage out of us. But man, by the time that they were like, consistently putting out like little quick looks of the game, and by the time it came out, I was pretty excited. Like by the time they announced like how the story was going to be handled, I was excited because, hey, I like Ian Flynn's writing for Sonic, have for a long time, and I sure thought it came together and was a fun experience.
Yeah, it was interesting following all the like advertisements going up to it, whether it was like a straight up like video teaser ad or if it was like a gameplay video here or there, and it was interesting seeing like the social wave going from I don't know about this to all of a sudden it seemed like there was some point in the advertising campaign where something just clicked for everybody and everybody's just like, this is looking pretty good. So
yeah, when they started advertising it properly, that's when it started looking good. Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
And it did feel, and I can only speak for myself, it did feel different from the look, as silly as it is to boil it down. I do think that there is something to the Sonic cycle of, well, maybe it'll be, better than the last one, building it up, my expectations, etc., etc. And then, oh, well, that was whatever. Time for the next one. And it felt different from that because I think they were pretty forthcoming about this not being another, like, boost style Sonic game. Like, they didn't straight up say, hey, we're going back to adventure, we're going back to X or Y. It's like, this is going to be a new thing. And so keeping that in mind, I went into it with like tempered expectations and was pleasantly surprised.
I mean, let's just briefly I know we got to say it right off the bat. We're going to talk about it in more detail before, but the one thing which actually caught my attention more than any of like the early previews and everything was the mention that Ian Flynn was going to be on board for this, because that's what a lot of us have been asking for a long time. Like, no offense to Ken Pontac and Warren Graff, I enjoyed a lot of the stuff that they provided for the Sonic stories. But, Ian Flynn is a boy who has been writing for Sonic for a long, long time. Why did I call him a boy? It's a strange concept, this small child writing Sonic. Well, small children do tend to do that. But for a long time, he has been writing Sonic fiction in a way that I think is really good. And now he's a part of what has been, for a while, a struggling narrative in video games, and that's Sonic. It has been for a while.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it's crazy to like make it clear that this was not only like, hey, bringing in Ian to like do the English story, is that no, the director and the producer, Kishimoto and Iizuka respectively, like brought Ian in to like write the main scenario. Like they gave him the bare bones they had, like it's going to be open world, Sonic and friends that are coming to these islands, etc., etc. But I think this is like one of the first times that like that was done by like not someone directly within like Japanese Sonic team. Like Ian was not taking a translation of a Japanese script and adapting it like previous writers and localizers have done for the series. Like he got to flesh out this stuff, and he's been as open as he can. As always, like there are lots of like NDAs and like how the sausage is made he can't get into, but definitely recommend like looking up his YouTube question and answers where he talks about some of this and how he was very much in communication with Sonic team and everybody, and like, hey, can I use this character, can we mention this one, can Sonic say this, etc., etc. And I would be lying if that was not the main factor that made me excited for this game. Like, everybody's got opinions on Sonic writing. Some people have valid reasons for not liking Ian's writing, but I'm sorry, like the crazy people that hate his guts, like that ain't me, man. I was excited to hear that he was going to be working on this, and like spoilers, I really liked it.
Now, I do believe that weren't Pontac and Graff like a bit more involved in Lost World story?
I would have to look it up. I still think that the majority of it was laid out for them, as far as they, and again, this is all stuff I'll have to like look up after the fact, but I don't think it was ever as like they were given almost a blank slate
it's not like, Generations where they were doing more translation localization than they were. They had a lot more freedom on Lost World, as I recall.
Yeah.
That checks out. It's not your typical Sonic story in many ways. It's a little out there. But this one, also not your typical Sonic story in many ways. And boy, I like it because of that.
Yeah.
I want to dive into the story. I mean, as much as I loved the game on the whole, like, that was the main part that got me, like, super excited in the presentation. But let's talk about the gameplay and, like, how this game feels compared to, I mean, geez, the entire 3D Sonic series.
I will say, there is plenty of what the Sonic 3D series has been up to this point within the game itself, if you look at its cyberspace stages, but that is but a small fraction of the actual game time, because for the most part, you're playing open world Breath of the Hedgehog, I guess. A concept I wasn't sure that I was going to like or enjoy in any way, but it's fun.
Yeah.
We kind of discussed that when we did our fan games episode with Sam of Freak Zone Games, where, like, that has been a thing that's been around for a long time in, like, 3D Sonic fan games, is like, yeah, here's an open world, here's how Sega should do it, quote unquote, but how do you build an entire, full-priced game around that? And I feel like Sega at least figured it out on a surface level for Frontiers.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part they really made it work in Sonic Frontiers. I'm not going to say they hit it completely out of the park, but they definitely, using a baseball analogy, they definitely third base, if not a home run on this, just not out of the park.
Yeah. Inside the park home run.
Yeah, inside the park home run. That's a good way to describe it. Because I think there is a good progression of what is available in the open world segments from zone to zone, or I should say open zone, because that's how they've described it. But like starting from the first zone, it's a little bit more sparse. You kind of get, and I think that might be a good thing. You get to like kind of really understand how Sonic moves in this game particular. And then as you go from zone to zone, there's kind of more things to do, more enemies to fight, more obstacles, especially on the third zone. That's a lot going on there. But I think there are still times when you're traveling the open world and it's just a little bit too sparse in a couple of areas, and I think like maybe some parts of the world could have actually gotten shrunk down just a little bit, or some ways to get around could have been polished, could have been enhanced a little bit. But overall, the open world really shines here. And it's interesting because going into the game, I actually thought the cyberspace levels were going to be one of the more, I mean, the open world's a big thing, but I thought the cyberspace was going to be like kind of the glue and the thread that holds things together. But at least for myself speaking, I don't honestly remember a whole lot of the cyberspace levels. I remember some, definitely, especially because in preparation for this, I did the arcade mode where I went through all the levels just to either refresh my memory or do some of the ones that I didn't get to in the open world. But honestly, I remember more about the open world than the actual level-to-level stages.
I feel like that was something we started hearing from people who got to play it for like extended periods of times, like trade shows before it came out, where it started to shift where people were like, oh, okay, like the cyberspace levels are there, but they're not really the main draw. Like you do get resources for them, like you need to go to the cyberspace levels to like unlock the Chaos Emeralds, but they're like pretty quick sections of levels, and I believe most of them are like built off architecture from previous 3D Sonic games. Like,
yep.
I knew Shadow's Skyrail was in there, but I marked out when it dropped me into Metal Harbor, and I realized that what it was. Like,
yep.
That was pretty cool.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I can place that now. Yeah.
As the internet is wont to do, when it was pretty much revealed that like all the cyberspace were based on like old levels, people were like, I can't believe they did this. They copy pasted it. It's ridiculous. And now that I've played through the game a few times, I think it works fine. Like I also agree that it does get a little monotonous because they're all based on, 4 archetypes. It's Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and
It's something city-ish. It's vaguely like Speed Highway City Escapey, but
yeah, it's more of like a Frontiers update to that. And I think they do kind of get monotonous, but at the same time, like most of them take like less than 90 seconds to do, unless it's a one with a gimmick going. So
yeah, it's kind of weird to do a level that is even longer than 2 minutes and feel like this is long.
It was kind of to pad it out a little bit as well. I feel like they felt like... I remember them saying that they felt like the game wasn't complete enough without a little something extra. So they just, like, well, back to the old Generations draw, like they done for Forces.
it could also be like a case of, in case the open world doesn't work out, they want to have like a more traditional Sonic experience to kind of counterbalance that.
I think you're on the money.
Even if they're basically the equivalent of the Breath of the Wild shrines in the game.
Yeah. And I think that's what the arcade mode is for too, so that, I mean, you have to unlock it by beating the game, but like if you do want to, for the people who do want to go back to Sonic Frontiers and like, I don't really feel like doing the open world, I just want to like pop in for a second, those levels are there for you.
You talked about how the game dumps you on the first island, and I thought did a pretty good job of introducing you to the concepts pretty quickly, like literally with a voice from the sky telling you where to go for like the first 10 minutes. The thing that really surprised me, and this was known before the game came out, was how much you can adjust like how Sonic feels in the open world. Unfortunately, doesn't carry over into cyberspace, but that's probably its own kettle of fish. How much did y'all play with those sliders and fine tuning? Because
not much. Like I set myself to high speed mode and kind of left it there.
Yeah, same really. I didn't really bother messing with it. Maybe I should have. Might have been funny.
I think I set myself to high speed as well, and I think I messed with the fine tuning a little bit, but I don't think I delved too far deep into it. I kind of want to go back and mess around with that a little bit more now.
I think the most I did is immediately turned everything up, like turning radius and whatever. And I think I could have played the game like that, but I didn't like how it looked visually, where like Sonic was like making like 90-degree turns instantly. And I was like, I kind of like the level they had it at, where I still felt like I could make like, all of the high speed movements, like boosting as fast as possible, like without the turn radius turned all the way up. But I do really appreciate the fact that those options are in there at all. And especially if like, hey, this might be your first 3D Sonic game, or first 3D Sonic game in a while if you fell off, and that you can tweak that for whatever you want. Because there's some accessibility options in there for like motion blur and whatnot, because I know that can bother some people real bad.
Yeah.
They've never done this before, though. They've never given you the right to be like, okay, how fast do you want your Sonic?
Yeah.
That's unusual, but I kind of like it.
Yeah. And it stacks on top of the fact that you can upgrade like all of Sonic's abilities, including his speed.
Yeah, if you want to wait a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of the upgrades, and I meant to talk to you guys about this while I was playing, but like, where did y'all end up placing most of your attention and time into upgrades? Because I definitely spent the most time doing strength and defense, and then speed after that, and I didn't really bother with rings. What'd y'all do?
I was definitely more speed focused over rings, but that's mostly because like strength and defense, those will just go up on their own based on how many collectibles I find.
Yeah.
But it's like I didn't really see a whole lot of need for more rings at the time.
You already have a lot of rings. And then it just kind of like decreases your ability to do the blue lightning like max rings thing if you make it the old max ring account even higher.
Yeah, like it doesn't really become worth it until you get to the very last level of that, which will give you unlimited blue movie lightning. But it's like it's also such a slog to level up the speed of the rings, because you can only do it like. You gotta collect you gotta collect so many Cocos. You can only do it one at a time. And it's just
that just seems like I'm kind of surprised they have not put a quality of life patch out to address that.
Hey, they finally did! They waited to include it in the first planned free update, but hey, what are you gonna do? And that first free update should be available by now, so go download it and check it out.
Because there's no reason you shouldn't be able to do multiple levels for that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
With the Hermit Coco, he just like says, "Oh, you got all these? Yeah, have it all at once."
Yeah.
Elder's like, "Sorry, I need to take my time with this. It's a very delicate process. I have to count all of the Cocos you've delivered to me."
It's cloudy right now. My solar calculator's not working. Hold on, wait for the sun.
So if you don't know, this game being open world is chock full of resources, and so there are different resources for upgrading all of Sonic's main abilities, which is speed, ring capacity, and then strength and defense. Strength and defense have their own little, they're just like heart pieces. They're funny little fruit shapes, but they have their own separate those. But then speed and ring counts are upgraded with collecting Cocos, the little, terracotta, very Chow reminiscent. We'll get to that.
Aha, you found them.
Yeah, again, just they're just Koroks, but hey, that's fine. There are a lot of influences in this game that it wears on its sleeve, and I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? It works. I feel like it works, so who cares?
Yeah.
Isn't it great that you pick them up like rings, though? Like, it's
Yes.
not an elaborate process. It's just like, oh, they go.
Yeah, but I feel like you had to like actively go looking for them. They weren't as commonly scattered around as like rings were.
No.
And it's like they're easy to miss too. Like they kind of blended with the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do tend to. They at least I did appreciate like the little bubbles they hang out in sometimes. It gives you like 20 at a time. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, like you just pick those up automatically. You don't have to run around. But so anyway, yeah, all that to say that strength and defense, your upgrade guy, one of the I think he's the Hermit Coco, and then the Elder is the one. Yeah. Mr. Hermit Coco just says, "Oh, you collected, 40 speed and defense things? Let me just upgrade you all at once." And the little animation completes in about 5 seconds and says, "All right, your speed went up by 2 levels and your defense went up by 3. And unfortunately, when you go to the Elder Coco, who asks you to, rescue all these little potted plant babies, he only takes, 20 at a time? Will ask you every time, what level do you want to put it in? Do you want to put it in speed? Do you want to put it in rings? Or do you not want to cash it in at all? And all of your abilities go up to level 99, and the animation for upgrading takes about 7 to 8 seconds, and yeah, that's not too fun. Not sure why they decided not to do the same thing for both, where you say, hey, you have 20 levels available, put 15 into speed and 5 into rings. And
I'm gonna be honest, I turned on auto key presser and went to make a sandwich.
yeah.
Has someone done the Chad Hermit Coco versus the Virgin Elder Coco yet?
Sure. I mean, thankfully, to bring it back, like, most of my complaints about Frontiers are just little nitpicky things like that.
Yeah.
Like the fact that, like, the cyberspace levels maybe don't feel as tight as they did in Unleashed or Generations because it's a whole new, physics and control scheme. But also, they're not a huge part of the game. And
you can actually kind of skip them, but we'll get to
that. They're not, they're not bad at all. Or, the fact that a lot of the open world is populated with like floating platforms and springs and that just kind of pop in everywhere, which again is something I bet they patch because I don't want to tell tales out of school, but people have been ripping the game apart and saying like, oh, the pop in issue is something they could fix for basically every platform but the Switch.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But yeah, I actually had a lot of fun just running through the levels and jumping on the random platforms because it feels tight and it does a super good job. I can count on like one hand the number of times that something failed and like dumped me out of a platform that I was supposed to going in. And I was like, wow, they really sat down and said like, if we're going to do this, it has to work every time. And it just about for me, I was very surprised. Just thinking back to things like, Adventure or even up to Heroes, talking about like the times where the light speed dash on rings failed, and hey, they put it on its own button finally for this game, so it's almost impossible to fail it.
I must have missed the tutorial that told you push the stick in to do the ring dash, because I like kept seeing him and I'm like, how do I do the
I missed that
dash?
too. Yeah.
I did as well, so put that on the negatives column.
It's generally pretty solid, I think. Like, obviously there's plenty of jank across the game. That's something people have been very quick to point out, and that's fair. It's a multi-platform game that's difficult to get right. And I do feel like the gameplay is at its weakest, like, once you get to, like, the third island, and you're stuck, like, doing lots of these 2D sections where it, like, drags you out of the 3D plane to be like, nope, you're playing this bit now. You're doing this whether you like it or not. But for the most part, it's just really fun. More so than I expected it to be honest with you.
I think I've been watching a few people play through the game just to especially over the holidays, just to build up my, like, I need some outside perspectives. And I think it was Liam was playing on Matt McMuscles' channel and coined some really good phrases that I really appreciated, where I think it was it
The little micro tasks.
Yes, microtasks, that was it. That are kind of mindless, but not in a bad way. It's stuff to do that feels like it's contributing towards a larger goal. And the game does a really good job of spacing those out. Like, there is almost always something to do.
Yeah.
Like, whether or not it needs you to, like, I think I've already said the game is full of resources and gives you a ton of them. I'm sure because they decided, like, what would be worse, like people getting too many of these or people getting stuck and saying, like, oh, well, I guess I got to go find 40 more Whipsadoodles and getting bored. So I think they went with the former. And yeah, for the most part, I think it works really well. Like you said, one of the exceptions is, once you make it to Chaos Island, they do decide to, like, force you on those 2D planes a lot. And thankfully they abandoned that pretty quick right after that island. But it does kind of feel like they were like, well, what do we do to distinguish this island? Oh, we'll put a bunch of this in. And not my favorite, but also it does end eventually.
Yeah.
I'm just not a big fan of the 2D sections because it is those Unleashed Generation style 2D sections that just my brain's like, okay, time to play a classic Sonic game. Wait, no, it's different and weird.
Yeah.
And that happens in the cyberspace as well, and it's fine. I got used to it, but being forced into it ain't great.
Yeah, it's not as bad as Forces, that's for sure. Where I feel like the 2D, like, felt its worst. But yeah, thankfully it's not 60% of the game like that. But anyway,
yeah, there is one mechanic of Sonic's that I want to mention that for the most part, I just did not like throughout most of the game, and this is nitpicky, this is very specific, but it's his turning in air when he's jumping. It feels really slow, and it feels like they're forcing him to, like, make a ellipse or a circle in the air instead of previous games where he could kind of, like, turn on a dime in the air to move around. And that kind of messed me up in both open world and cyberspace. And I'm just like, I just want to quickly go this way, but it's, like, making me sludge through molasses in the air just to, like, turn and jump at the same time. And that's the one part of, like, Sonic's, like, ongoing core functionality that I didn't like. Otherwise I was fine with it, but that did cause some frustration here and there.
It feels like, and even the officially produced Speed Strats videos that came out for it, that it wants you to launch Sonic, like, in the direction you want him to go, then to, like, instead of being able to, like, divert him in midair like a plane, which is how, like, the adventure games worked. I remember, like, that was half of those is, you jump off of this and just guide Sonic down. And yeah, it doesn't really work like that in Frontiers. So it takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
I did like that, though. You were talking about the micro tasks. There's also like the challenges that you have to do across the map. That's one of the things that kept me playing. Is like, well, I need to unlock the whole map now. My completionist brain wants me to do that. So you're not. So while you've got this massive space, you've got incentive to go around and unlock the rest of the map, and I enjoy that. Like some of the challenges are BS, like no question about it. Some of them I really struggled with, and I don't think it was meant to be as hard as it was. But some of them you're just like, okay, you need to repel this. You need to parry this ball that's going to shoot at you. Guess how you do that? You hold the parry button.
Yeah,
So
it's
just
not
take
really a
break for
parry at
while.
all. It's more of a activate Sonic's permanent force sense.
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. There are a bunch of concepts in this game that work, but I feel like should have been, in a perfect world with unlimited time and resources, they could have pushed a little forward, but is a great, it makes me really excited for the follow up to this game where they refine a lot of that. And the parry is one of those where, again, I bet they said, okay, well, what would be worse if we try and introduce an action game, Devil May Cry, Bayonetta dodge mechanic, or just a cool parry that is, that anybody can pick up and figure out. And I agree with you that I also like the little challenges to fill out the map. Like by the time I was replaying the game, I was like, well, I'm just going to do all those first to unlock the whole area. And I feel like they did a good job of having just enough of unique ones and some repeating ones that I was always looking forward to what the new ones would be. So when I made it to the final island, and there's a really cute, Tetris, columns-esque block puzzle where you have to look at the different pieces and then drop them in the order they are in the example. I really like that.
Yeah, that was a neat puzzle.
The one thing I wished, and then to go back to hey, for the sequel maybe, is I wish they would have had some kind of flag to where you didn't accidentally do the harder version of a puzzle first. So, one of those where it's a larger shape, or, you have to parry 4 times instead of 2.
Right.
I wish they would have set something up to where you always do the easiest one first and build up instead of just finding the harder one on the map. I'm happy to say that that's the biggest nitpick I had for those little challenges. I really like some of the racing ones where it's you hit the flag and then 1,000 yards away is the platform you have to go. The ones that shoot you up onto really tall towers just felt so good to complete, even if the timing is quite generous.
Not a big fan of the ones with the balls, though. The blue balls, the blue spheres, you might say, that they shoot at you, that you're supposed to shoot back into hoops, because I had a real depth perception issues with that one, and working out how to send them through those hoops. Maybe I'm the only one who struggled on those, but I don't know.
I did a bunch of them by accident. It pretty much counted if you touched the lip of the ring they're supposed to go through. It's oh, that counts. But
yeah, it took a while to get the right angle for some of them, but I never reached a point where I ran out of time on them.
Oh.
Yeah. They also they don't really communicate that jumping into the ball versus doing a homing attack on it produces very different angles. You just kind of have to figure that out on your own. I guess it's you do it enough times, you eventually get it. But yeah, some of them were pretty finicky. I do got to say, I did it legit the first time, the little jump rope ones where, it wants you to hop in time with the laser, before I realized that if you just jump in the air and hold the parry button, Sonic levitates. So but again, that is such a harmless, I wouldn't even call that a criticism. It's just that parry will get refined in whatever is next. Because it does, I think and maybe now is the time to talk about the combat. The parry falls into the rule of cool for Sonic's combat system, which I think succeeds in that aspect 100%.
It took me so long to realize what I was supposed to do with the parry, because I'm used to, character action games where they want you to parry by having you press the button at the same time as the attack making contact. And I kept trying to do that. I'm like, why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work? And I'm like, oh, no, I can just hold the button and it will automatically parry as soon as something hits.
It took me some time too to figure that out, especially the first supersonic fight where it is asking you to parry, and it really just wants you to hold it down once the your enemy is winding up for a big attack. At the end of the day, I really like the combat. I don't think it's that complex. Like once you start unlocking moves on the skill tree, and if you've played any game made in the past, like 20 years, basically, like since the first Assassin's Creed, what like that skill tree looks like. And I did find myself going like, that skill tree sure is kind of small.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, you can pretty much unlock the entire thing by the third island, aside from like the story moves. And, I don't think that's necessarily bad. You can unlock an auto combo where, there's several points in the game where it says like, do it this way for, bonus damage, or this way for, lesser damage. I can't say I really ever saw a difference, mostly because I was leveling up, my strength and defense a lot. But like I said, at the end of the day, the combat looks really good. It feels like they studied a lot of like what makes Sonic moving look cool from like, I would imagine like previous animations, stuff like Sonic X, like hell, even back to like, the Sonic CD intro, and like, how do we translate that into Sonic defeating these evil robots?
And it works. Some really cool moves there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Lots of speed related based moves and things like that.
I wish there was a few more moves available on the skill tree, especially because after you unlock everything, you just keep earning the skill points, and it just becomes like 99 plus. But I
maxed out my skill tree, but while I was like halfway through.
Yeah, but I think in this case it's a good thing, because I think we've all four of us here have played games where there's menus with just a ton of stuff and your mind immediately just goes blank and you're just like, why am I even looking at this again? So it's nice to not be bombarded by like a ton of pictures and text. And in this case, I'm glad that I'm wanting more than wanting less.
Yeah, because there are times in Sonic's past where I'm like, boy, this is too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they could do that. I'm even thinking of around the same time I was playing the new God of War Ragnarok, which has a simplified combo system compared to like previous God of War games, but is also like quite complex. And I still did, and fully saying this might just be how I tend to play games with lots of combos, is you find your bread and butter combo and kind of stick with it.
Yeah.
And I kind of made it to the end of that game without having leveled up like maybe 60% of my other combos, and so spent some time in that God of War game like doing those and realizing, that there is a lot of this to it. And like you said, I think I'm glad for the first time they've introduced such a complex by comparison combat system for Sonic that they played it safe, maybe is the right phrase to use, then dumping in a whole bunch of stuff that like might have gotten lost by the wayside. Like, could you imagine making it through to like the last island and realizing, I haven't used this move once?
I mean, I'm just thinking of like the werehog combat menu, and I'm like, I'm not going to remember half of this.
Oh, yeah.
No. And yes, I think I've said that before, is, you find the one combo that works for the werehog and just stick with it.
Yeah.
That's a good example. I'm glad they didn't do that again. Again, it makes me excited for like the follow-up to this to see what they can add on top of that.
Yeah.
Combat's really good, though. It's silly. It's simple, but it's good. And when you find a new enemy, you just like work out what's the deal with this one? What do I need to do to beat this one?
Yeah.
And once you've like struggled through that, you're like, okay, now I know how to do this in the future, or I'll just avoid them because you don't need to fight them all.
Right.
Yeah. I think that does, even like my second playthrough when I unlocked the auto combo feature, I just enabled it because like I said, I'd played through the first time like 20, 30 hours, like doing all the moves individually, and just got to like, okay, I did that. Let me just kind of have a make Sonic look cool button. But The enemies do, like you said, like they do introduce like second tier enemies, like, you know, above the garbage fodder ones that require like specific moves to properly defeat. And I thought there was a good balance, especially once you make it to the what is it, Ares Island, the desert with Knuckles, where you have the one that you need to stomp on like a giant button, and that just felt good every time. That was fun.
There was times during the game when I was doing combat, and I occasionally thought back to Sonic
Battle.
Yes, Sonic Battle.
Yes,
because I played the crap out of that game, and I like. There's not really much you can compare as far as combat between that game and between Battle and Frontiers, but they're both like, I kind of wonder like if they do continue with this trend for like the sequel to Sonic Frontiers, it'd be cool if they incorporated some of the more, I mean, like combat's already fast in this game, but like some of the really like almost Twitch lightning fast moves in Sonic Battle, like being able to like zoom forth in the air and then like do a slam down, or like doing like a shockwave thing. Maybe
refine and introduce some more like character action stuff. Like I'm actually surprised, like there is the Psyloop, which I guess is its own thing. I'm surprised they did not introduce something like akin to like Witch Time and Bayonetta, like a last second dodge, like slows down time or whatnot. Like there's some visuals that make me think about that, but I would be surprised if in the follow up to this they didn't introduce something like that. Like you said, like, oh, you know, maybe the parry window is still large, but the dodge window is, you know, much smaller, something like that.
I'm actually almost surprised they didn't do like the still time from the Sonic movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's just the X-Men Quicksilver thing, but there's a possibility for that, like stopping time, Zawarado.
When your character is fast, it sure as hell works. Maybe we'll get some lips to God's ears, but I mean, you know, if Shadow is playable, like, are they going to have some chaos control stuff in a follow up? Or, you know, they promised playable characters in that thing, so I'm you know, like it has been since he was introduced in the 2000s. I'm sure people are champing at the bit for Shadow, but
I mean, I think it's just going to be the characters that are in this game. But
I think so.
I mean, because I know Shadow is kind of like the uninvited guest for Sonic Frontiers because of the because of the Twitter takeover where it's the cast of Sonic Frontiers and Shadow, because people care about him.
The Psyloop, I feel like it works. It also, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it other than it works in concept. Like you can draw a circle around an enemy for extra damage, and it feels like a worthy extension to the combat that is not as intrusive as I thought when, like, in previews they announced it.
Yeah, it's you can draw a circle.
Yeah.
Or anything else that you feel like drawing.
Yeah. Draw an infinity symbol to get temporary boost.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's an actual thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of hidden in there. I remember I did it by accident a few times until I finally realized, like, oh, this is, you know, it gives you like free boost for a little bit, or, you know, you can cut grass in one of the mini games, or I don't know, you can try and draw boobs. It doesn't really matter. Not that I would ever do that.
I mean, the main purpose for the Psyloop in the end for me was just like, okay, need to build up my speed meter.
Yep.
Time to just farm rings for a couple minutes.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm just circle.
I think that is the best application of it. And again, I wonder if that wasn't a like, okay, Sonic needs rings, but also this is going to be different, but so we need something to where players can just get rings all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think Luke already mentioned it earlier, but if you reach your max capacity for rings, is like you literally get a short little cutscene of Sonic like going into movie Sonic super speed mode with the blue aura and the eyes, and then your max speed is temporarily increased, and it's just cool.
Yeah.
I remember when that was literally just a cosmetic for Sonic Colors Ultimate. I was like, you know, that looks pretty cool. Like, I wouldn't say I would ever want movie Sonic to replace Sonic. Like, I think it's great in the movie itself, but bringing in elements like that is pretty neat.
Yeah.
I think it's perfectly fits this Sonic as well.
And I like the aesthetic as well, and I just Whenever it pops up, I've told you guys this before, my brain instantly goes, wow, blue lightning is fast.
That good old Sonic X pilot. Yep.
He's the only defense against the scientist of supreme evil, Dr. Eggman.
Eggman. I do want to add on to the Psyloop. I do think it's never at all in the game did I ever feel like the Psyloop was a hindrance to my gameplay or felt like it was being shoved down my throat for one thing or another. I felt like anytime you used it, it felt appropriate. And I think, honestly, given that you're in an open zone, open world thing, it was a stroke of genius to allow you to just farm rings by doing that, because otherwise, like, imagine all the complaints of like if you lose rings, you have to like search tens or hundreds of square miles just to get enough rings to get your boost back.
Go back to the little floating platforms you've already been to get rings and yada yada yada. And it really does seem like the abundance versus scarcity. They chose abundance, and I think that was the way to go with it. Mm-hmm. And I do think the mini bosses and some of the higher tier enemies do a good job of reminding you to like, hey, try the Psyloop on this, this giant walking tower's legs, or this enemy that is blocking all of your regular attacks. Like, try the Psyloop. And even when you get to these supersonic battles, it also like, hey, don't forget you can do the Psyloop, and you just launch this hundreds of feet tall robot like thousands of feet into the air, and here is a whole other like sequence. And
I never did that. Oh shoot, I gotta try that.
Yeah.
I gotta try that.
Oh man, it's pretty cool. Which, boy, should we? I don't. We're trying to do this by section, and we're talking about gameplay. But I mean, do we save the supersonic stuff for like when we talk about the music, or
we'll get to
man?
Yeah.
Just quick question. What's everybody's favorite Guardian? The mini bosses of the mini bosses. Which was your favorite one to come across? I mean, obviously the internet was very taken by Squid. Their live Squid reaction every time he showed. Because he's really annoying. Squid will just be like, come along and bring his giant road to you, and you'll be like, I'm in the middle or something. All of a sudden, Squid!
Squid!
The favorite one I saw, which, I mean, might have been acknowledged by like the official Sonic Twitter account, was like, oh, love is in the air. Wrong, Squid! All of the ninja series, which I think there are like 5 or 6 versions. Those do I think that's the first one you fight in like the tutorial. Those do a great job of like, hey, use your combos on these guys. I do actually like Squid, like when I got into a groove of like how to dodge the stuff, because he puts out a long like light path behind him, and you hop on it and are like working your way up to the main robot to destroy it. And I think it's a little harder if like, I think it really teaches you to like, hey, you kind of want to have max rings all the time so you have that boost.
Yeah.
And it teaches you like how to like lay off the boost, let it charge back up, so you're not, because if you run out of boost, like you are like drop way down in speed for a few seconds, and it's better to let off and let it catch back up. So yeah, as silly and like, annoying it can be to just like get squidded out of nowhere.
Squid.
I do actually like Squid. The only ones I could really say were a little irritating were the ones that have like long cutscenes assorted with them, like Caterpillar and what was it? Yeah, Tank have a few where it takes full control away from you. Tank is probably the worst, where it kicks up the dust storm and Sonic's just flying through, and you're kind of timing homing attacks. Like, that felt a little cheap because it was a little hard. It didn't properly telegraph, like, this is where you attack in this section. Tank, I think, is the only one I didn't like.
I think any of the ones that sort of like, like you said, take control and sort of like, oh man, this is going to look so cool, but we need to like dominate the screen for like at least 5 or 10 seconds. The shark one I thought was a cool concept, but having to restart that battle over and over every time I hit into something, it's like, right, I gotta go wait for him to do his whole cool little setup of diving through the sand and dragging me along.
That took a long time.
It's one of those like style over substance things.
It should be about half as long.
Yeah.
I think the shark, because I did like the shark, but yeah, it just took too long.
For me, I enjoyed pretty much any of the Ninja series, and I also, whenever there was a Strider, I was like, yeah, I'll go beat up a Strider. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
I think my least favorite was the Ghost, because that luckily I only had to fight that one once, but like that was annoying.
It's drawn out.
It goes so long.
It's just too long. I like that it's very different, because I don't think it's constantly draining your rings, and you can't damage it until you hit the spots on the map, like the little activated towers that it does. I think, and yeah, again, it just seemed like it went on too long.
Yeah.
It was also a little disappointing after like how cool the like you said the Oh, I think I'm thinking of, I really like the Ashura on the first island.
Yeah.
That are just giant ones where you climb up their legs and arms. And I was a little disappointed that these Striders on Ares Island are, you hop up the little rings and before you can get to the center. And I was like, oh, I kind of just wanted another Ashura where I could like run up to the top of this thing. But
yeah,
it's not that bad. I think the Striders are actually really well balanced as far as like they don't take too long to get to that core and initiate proper combat. And yeah, I think we forgot to say it, but like the lock on by just, clicking in the thumbstick actually works pretty well for most of these enemies.
Yeah.
I quite like Sumo. I just think it's funny.
Yeah, Sumo's pretty cool, yeah.
Surprisingly so.
You get to bounce off the ropes and knock it into them. Yeah, those are... I really like that too.
It did take me a while to figure out that you could just kind of cheat Sumo real quick by side-looping him and then doing the, like, quick time sequence, but...
Oh, I thought that was like the intended way to do that.
That's how I did it.
I didn't realize the side loop thing at first. I just kept trying to get behind him, or actually to like manually push him into the electricity.
Yeah, I think that is part of as far as the psi loop seems like it's fairly inobtrusive as far as like you don't feel like you have to use it all the time, but those mini bosses specifically are good at pushing you to say like, hey, don't forget to try the psi loop, and so it feels like a natural part of Sonic's moveset.
I think the combat's all right. I definitely, like I said before, I definitely took some getting used to with the parrying. There's definitely some enemies where I would like go out of my way to avoid them. Like, what were the dogs that circle you that you have to parry all of them?
Oh yeah, on that last island.
Yeah.
Those are fun one or two times, and then you're like, yeah, I'm just gonna run past these dumb puppers.
Well, one thing I will say is that the first time I got caught in the big bubble enemy, like, it came out of nowhere, and I'm like, what the is this?
Like, it's terrifying, but also really gross. It's disgusting, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit.
And I can't remember now off the top of my head if the drowning music plays.
It does. It's the Generations mix.
Yes. Does it play in, like, normal bodies of water, too?
I don't think so. Maybe I didn't sit in the normal body of water for long enough, but it definitely played when I was in that thing.
Yes, I love that. And I know the count, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 counter starts to come up in those enemies too. And they're very simple. That is like the definition of like, this is a one gimmick enemy. You just need to do your stomp.
You need to stomp a new orifice into it. And...
Yeah. But the fact that they went like, yeah, this is trying to drown Sonic. This is hey, why didn't Eggman come up with this concept? You should have, dude.
Yeah, the ultimate Eggman enemy would just be made of spikes and water.
Yeah. I like how on the fourth island, like the breather story island, some of those guys like actually help you traverse. Like they grab Sonic and take him to a place he needs to go, and then by the time you break out of him, you're on a new platform. I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, like I do wish though that there wasn't as much of a stop when you use the homing attack. Like I get it for combat purposes, but it just made the cyberspace levels, it feels like it's such a kind of momentum breaker almost. where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm so used to, playing something like Generations or Unleashed, where it's like bam, 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 and then just for that solitary thud as you hit that first enemy, and kind of the cooldown before you're able to hit the next one. I don't know. I don't like it quite as much.
I feel like they even acknowledge that in those speed strat videos where they're like, hey, homing attack is great for, traversal, but also you can boost before, connecting with one and like jump past all the enemies. So it feels intentional, but it does take some getting used to when you're used to, more than 2 decades of the homing attack being much quicker.
Yeah, I'm hoping they find a better balance with that in the next game.
I kind of want to take a moment to talk about what this game looks like, because we've been kind of skirting around the fact that this is a very different looking Sonic game, even in terms of similar games I hate to make it in terms of look and maybe even vibe, the closest game that's come out so far is Sonic 06, but this is not bad. And when I say not bad, I don't mean it's not bad in the sense of, it could be better. I mean, it is not awful, terrible, horrible, messy sort of game.
Even though it invites the comparison, it's not it's not a Sonic model ripped from another game dropped into your default Unreal Engine field. It is more, would cohesive be the right word? Is that yes, this does not look like a traditional Sonic game, even like you said, like a Sonic 06 or an Unleashed that flirts with realistic textures and environments. It looks proper. It is not weird to see Sonic running around like a beautiful field of flowers on these rocky islands. I think for the most part, I really like it. I think the architecture of the designs, the enemies, we'll get into it, but all of the ancient technology, all of these characters look right at home with that.
Well, I think it employs a lot of fantasy sci-fi, which I vibe with personally, maybe as a Mass Effect fan, and as it certainly applies to the music too. But what we've got here is it's not like Sonic in the real world, even though the environments look a lot more realistic than what you're used to for Sonic. And personally, I don't mind seeing Sonic run across a rainy landscape so much with lots of grass, because it just makes me think of, we've mentioned it before, but driving by in the car and watching Sonic the Hedgehog running past through the window. Yeah. That's sort of the vibe I got from this. But if it this isn't just Sonic dumped in a big city, or Sonic dumped in, we're just going to say Soliana, because this is Sonic in a fantasy world, but not quite, just a realistic fantasy world, weird as it is to say.
It's less like you said, Sonic 06 is like Sonic dumped into Final Fantasy 13, or did it predate that anyway? This feels more like I said, like a cohesive world, like a Xenoblade Chronicles, which is very, like you said, high fantasy with future tech, with anime people running around with laser swords. It feels correct. It feels like it was intentional and not a there is the cyberspace levels, but none of the islands have checkered patterns or even it has lots of springs, but even those are color coded and designed to match the surrounding architecture for the most part.
We spent a long time talking about the enemies, but their look also reflects this. And the thing is, these enemies looking like weird sort of sci-fi monoliths, essentially, for a lot of them, actually works for this, because you could say, it's not like in Sonic 06 where Eggman was suddenly making all these realistic, I think I compared them to Bionicle-looking things before. No, this is because this is a new, we're going to get, not to get too far into the story, but this isn't necessarily, these aren't necessarily Eggman's creations, so it kind of checks out.
Yeah, that is something that comes up in the story. Basically throughout the whole narrative is characters keep saying all of this stuff on these islands looks like it was made by like the same civilization, and it turns out they're correct. And so yeah, the enemies, the level architecture, I love how even some of the platforms like have a very nice like ebony purple sheen, that have some really nice reflections. Like I played the game on my PlayStation 5, which I think is fairly comparable to the PC version. And like the reflections, the level surfaces, the textures, like, I feel like Sonic games have always looked pretty okay, but have never been like, real showstoppers. And Frontiers, like technical hiccups aside, like looks really nice, all things considered.
I agree. Yeah.
It does from the start, almost. Like, I was really happy with how you're dumped right into this environment in the game, with the exception of the initial rainfall, like when you start off the game, and that, because that looks like static and it does not look great. But once you get past that part, and you're in this kind of like moody section of the island that you begin this level in, I don't know, it just really works for me. It's good.
Yeah. It's another thing where I'm looking forward to what they add to it, because like when you make it to Chaos Island and you've made it through, like, your first island is, it's a rainy, a little bit jungle. It's more foresty. Your second one is your desert area. And then, Chaos Island is like an active volcano, like thousands of feet up into the elevation. And they all just look really good. Like I remember the glowing lava, like seeing it like halfway across the map looks really good. And like my only major complaint is the fact that we don't have more like environments. Like I really wanted a snowy level, or something like that, or maybe something like a tropical jungle with much more, like maybe instead of the sky, like you are under a canopy of a jungle and you can't see the sun poking out except certain areas. But like again, like I'm just more excited for where they decide to go next. The fact that I'm happy with how everything in the game looks and just want more. Give me more.
Yeah. That said, though, I think I agree with a lot of people that Chaos Island was kind of the low point in a lot of ways for me, just because it's so hard to navigate around because it's so splintered into different pieces, and it's just kind of a slog trying to figure out how to get to each one.
I suffered so long trying to get one of the Chaos Emeralds because I didn't know where to go to get to it.
See, I think that I had gotten to one of them the correct way, and then I forgot how I got there, so I had to do something completely different to do it. Like, I think there was like a specific passage I had to take to get there, but it's like I had waited long enough to go back to it that I forgot about that. So I'm like, okay, clearly what I'm supposed to do is get this bird enemy that's circling around. Like,
that's what I did.
Do the thing, climb on it, and then ride it all the way over this island. Which is cool that I could do that, but also I kind of wish I didn't have to do that because...
Yeah.
I don't believe it's the intended path, because going through it again, there is a very specific rail that is in a one corner tucked around and it's hard to just describe it with words and not visually, that will lead you to that group of islands that, yes, also the first time, like, I guess I broke sequence by using one of the flying enemies to glide over there. But I mean, yeah, we've acknowledged it. I think you just put it on record that we all agree Chaos Island is probably the worst one, just because of some odd decisions that maybe they didn't need to make.
And it sucks because I was looking forward to it when I heard of Chaos Island. What's that all about? That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting, but it sucks to play.
I do like the fortress enemy. That's pretty cool. The giant one with the rails. I guess it's like a fully evolved squid.
For me, I think just the biggest problem with Chaos Island is that it's too segmented, and they make you rely so hard on not just using grinding rails, but finding the specific grinding rails that you need to get to from one particular area to another. And
precisely.
And for an open world game that's supposed to give you more choices of how to like get from point A to point B, Chaos Island really limits what you can do in an open world Sonic game, especially with, as I mentioned just a moment ago, very specific grinding rails that you have to find. And if you're going full blast, full boost, you will skip it and you'll be like, where am I?
Well, you know what the problem is they've relied on the terrible thing that Sonic games have. That ruins a lot of them for me. Bottomless pits.
Yeah.
Because, the gaps between the islands are bottomless pits, and that kind of defeats the whole open world thing if you're having to find a way to each one.
Yeah.
Don't fall in the lava either.
It's kind of funny though.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He goes, ow!
It was, oh yeah, I'll get to it. I do love the focus on, especially, I think it's when Sonic is doing tricks, but also when you hit a surface you're not supposed to be able to traverse, is Sonic starts slipping, and he laughs the whole, like, when that happens, and I thought that was adorable. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, Sonic, despite the hell he goes through in this game, he does not lose his childlike wonder for the world.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that like speak to Sonic in general?
Oh yes.
Despite all the pitfalls and things that he's had to deal with over the decades, he still finds the time to laugh about it, because we all have to.
Yeah.
Is that a good transition to start talking about the story and characterization of this game? Because I think I'm ready if y'all are.
Because we'd spent a while talking about like this kind of like almost muted, somber look that the game has, and I think that's perfect for this kind of story, because this is not your typical Sonic story. Oh, you know what? We mentioned 06. This has vibes of Sonic 06 in that this sort of story is almost what Sonic 06 wanted to do, just not to quite the same scale. It's to a more personal, smaller scale. But this succeeds at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I think this game, because that was another thing that they talked about in pre-release. I think Iizuka, I want to say the director, and Ian himself talked about, like, yeah, we want to strike a more like melancholy tone with this game, but at the same time, these are still like the characters that you, as you know them. And I mean, I immediately thought of like, well, that's what a lot of like the IDW story arcs have felt like. Even, like lots of people bring up like the Metal Virus arc for being like pretty intense for a children's, mascot comic book character. But then it is the fact that, but it's still these characters and they feel like themselves. And that is what Frontiers feels like to me. And specifically, and I think Sega themselves have quietly like started like disregarding any like canon age for the characters, because this game feels like these characters are reminiscing and going into this scenario with more than 30 years of a franchise that they have been part of on their shoulders. And doggone it, I think they pulled it off.
It's so interesting to have a Sonic story where there's definable growth in the characters, and it's not like game specific. Well, okay, it's game specific. Let me reword this. It's not temporary growth to help them get from one story point to another story point, like. Like example of
Amy in Adventure 1 compared to Adventure 2.
Yes. The characters in this game get straight up introspective. Like, I mean, especially, like anyone who is not Sonic, who is stuck in between cyberspace and reality, they've got a lot of time to like think about things because they're not able to do anything. And what better way to use that time than to be introspective, and then the times where you get to talk to Sonic, like you're talking about what's on your mind, and it's just really interesting. I enjoy it.
I agree. If I can plug our mutual friend Jez, I think, did a comic about this where Sonic is talking to Knuckles, where he's like, hey Knuckles, what was it like being trapped in cyberspace? And he's like, it was a living hell. I had to confront every fear I've ever had. Music was good though. And yeah, there is that moment with each character where Sonic's like, I'm just running around my memories having a great time, and they're like, I wanted to die. But and I'm exaggerating, but let's do a quick recap of the story, because I think we said in the pre-show, like, the story scenario itself is not that complex. We can get through it in about a paragraph, but it's all of the character interactions, probably because the nature of trying to tell a cohesive story in an open world game. Is that it is in little bits. So the story opens up with Dr. Eggman on a mysterious island. He's found this relic and tries to install his own technology into it. And I think he's kind of speaking vaguely about, this powerful technology of this unknown people on the planet. And as soon as he plugs in his little Eggman USB doohickey, like, everything seems to go tits up for him.
Yep.
The enemies in the game appear, and he seems to get dragged into this like pillar thing, which you might recognize if you watch the prequel cartoon featuring Knuckles, which dang,
should.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Did we ever talk about that on an episode before we took a break? I don't know.
No, we did not.
Well, okay, yeah, your homework for this is to go watch the Sonic Frontiers prologue with Knuckles, which is, hot damn, a great intro into how great Knuckles is in this game. Because, like, if you're as old as us and you remember when Knuckles used to be, like, cool, like a different kind of cool from Sonic, and not, like, hey, I like it when he gets mad and punches things, but I'd like it when he was also cool. But yeah, that animation is fantastic.
Dream Team, it's Ian Flynn writing with Evan Stanley consulting, Tyson Hess with the designs, T. Lopes with the music, aside from the battle music. So good.
I don't know. It is like feature quality animation for a like 6-minute Sonic. A Sonic short, an official one.
What's good about it though, for me, for the Sonic fans, like for me who wasn't sure what the story was going to be like, even though I was looking forward to what Ian Flynn would do with it. This is the first sign of like Knuckles, like things that happened in the previous games. Let's talk about those for a few seconds. And I'm like, wait, what? You talking, like, when I saw an preview image of him on Angel Island, I was like, oh, so they're going to bring him back to Angel Island. That's cool, on the Emerald Shrine. It's like, my people were lost to time. I'm like, what? No, Knuckles, why are you talking about this? You never talk about this anymore. And suddenly, it's the Chaos Emeralds. Where did they come from? I'm like, yeah, where did they go? Are you going to get into that in this game?
Yeah, we are.
And suddenly I was like, I'm interested. So that set the scene.
Yeah, don't you literally see, like, the little glowing pink Tikal spirit ball for a second in that short? Yeah, that's... Oh, man, yep, that was good. So, yeah, Eggman seemingly gets sucked into this thing he tried to deactivate before these robots could tear him apart. And then you see Sonic, Tails, Amy in the tornado, flying in a beautiful blue sky, heading towards this mysterious group of islands, because all of the Chaos Emeralds have seemingly gathered at these islands by themselves. Keep that in mind. And, of course, anytime the tornado shows up now, it seems like it's immediately got to get struck by lightning or hit by a missile or basically just drop out of the sky. And Sonic gets separated from his friends and gets dropped into the first cyberspace level, which I thought was kind of a nice touch that they, just drop you into one. They've done that with a couple of games, and I kind of appreciate it before, like, getting to the nitty gritty of the tutorials. They'll just drop you into a level, kind of like, classic games used to do. Just boot it up and, hey, figure it out, stupid.
And it's kind of a good bait and switch because, like, you drop into the first level, which is, Green Hill. It's always Green Hill. And
Yes.
Yeah. Which, we've accepted it at this point.
It's fine. But, like, you get this, like, even though it's cyberspace, it's still colorful, it's still Green Hill. And then when you're done with that, then you go into, like, the melancholy, drab, kind of rainy opening area of the first island. And it's like, oh, that's different.
Sonic wakes up, puts himself together, and immediately is like, sounds pretty concerned that he can't seem to find anybody.
Tails? Amy? Oh, looks like I'm the only one who made it out of that. Whatever it was.
He really does sound that way, because Roger Craig Smith sounds a little different in this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
A bit lower performance. Like, he's
Yeah.
not his wisecracking usual. I mean, yeah, he is. He's got his jokes, but it's a different approach to the voice, I think, and the performance.
Yes. I think it is a good in between of his, like, how he played Sonic and Boom, and how, you know, you usually expect Sonic, which is like you said, just very up high energy. This feels more like a naturalistic performance.
Yeah.
And I remember when the first cutscene started coming out, I'm like, it sounds like he is reading like comic dialogue written by Ian or Evan or that team, and that is how I hear it. It's, yeah, I think naturalistic is the way to describe it, because it is occasionally sounds maybe like deeper than you're used to, but then even comparing it to Junichi Kanemaru, longtime Japanese voice of Sonic.
タイルスエミさっきの場所はグリーンヒルみたいだったがここは
It is very comparable that was the direction that they intentionally went with.
Yeah.
Just said, hey, just tone it down a little bit. Like, maybe the Sonic is a little more tired or a little more world weary at this point. And it did take some getting used to, but once he starts especially like conversing with other characters, it's one of my favorite performances, like, period.
Absolutely.
I've heard of from
Roger.
Sonic.
Roger's come a long way since the Alton Towers performance.
Oh
Whoa, check out the consoles!
Whoa! Hey there, and welcome to Sonic Spinball. I hope you're all ready for some high-speed fun. I just can't wait.
Man, I think I still remember where I was on the day that audio leaked, and I was like, I don't know how to feel about this, but yes, it's so interesting, because I think if people have not watched like extra things the cast has done, like the Twitter takeovers, that this is like it feels like a progression of that, of, because maybe they weren't necessarily having to, like, I wondered, like, if this game was straight up like prelay instead of like, did they have much of a, stay within 6 seconds or this line, or I don't know. I'm just geeking out on voice acting stuff, but it really does feel like this was an intentional different direction, and I really like it. All that to say, like, I really love Roger Craig Smith as Sonic in this game, like, more so than ever, and the fact that he does a lot of talking to himself, like, I like it. I'm glad. A mysterious voice starts speaking to Sonic, which I believe is played by Cindy Robinson.
It is, yeah.
It's one of those where almost every actor like doubles up on some roles, so they don't necessarily list it in the credits. Yeah, like you said, I'm pretty sure it's Cindy doing this very booming, very like mature, commanding voice.
Find the Chaos Emeralds. Destroy the Titans. Tear down the walls between dimensions.
Once you find out what the voice is, like, listening to it again, you're like, dang, it's kind of like, kind of bossy, a little scary. And,
Yeah.
But it's explaining, like, you gotta go to cyberspace, you gotta get the keys to get the Chaos Emeralds. Sonic's been through this before. He's had some mysterious voices and figures talk to him, so he's like, okay. So it's
And
not.
you can't criticize him for being dumb about it, as following a random voice, because he's literally like, well, that's some direction, I'll take that. 'Cause
Yeah.
Sonic just wants to be pointed somewhere to go, and he's like, well, that's the first thing I've had so far.
I mean, he talks about that at the beginning of the game. He's like, I'm just trying to figure out what to do.
I think the next thing that happens is he does encounter Amy, who is locked up in this, horrible looking cyberspace reboot hexadecimal prison. I guess this is also where the memory tokens get introduced, because that's like the resource that allows you to progress the story forward. And they're different on each island, for the most part, and correspond to like the character they're connected to. So, the first island is Amy, and so her memory tokens look like pretty little pink hearts.
It is kind of funny that Sonic needs to gain currency to talk to his friends.
Yeah.
But it's a way of stopping you from just, like, rushing through it, I suppose.
I guess the story constantly ties things back to cyberspace. Like, cyberspace is this place that has imprisoned his friends, but not Sonic. I think even the mysterious voice says, like, you're the chosen one, because of course he is, it's Sonic. And so it has affected him differently. I do think one of the conversations you have with Amy is she straight up says, like, do you think that's why you can control, like, a lot of the technology around the island? And Sonic is like, yeah, I guess so. It feels weird. And so that's why he can, like, seemingly move large objects with his mind and do the Psy loop and whatnot. So over the course of this, you free Amy and realize that she is still stuck between, like, the real world where Sonic is and cyberspace, and it's a little scary. She looks like Samara from The Ring she's kind of got, like, that VHS effect on her.
Oh yeah.
On the first island, Amy's story arc, I mean, sorry, I'm basking in it. It really does feel like, without being, and I'm going to say ahead of time, I think all of this stuff works. We can talk about, criticisms. Just me personally, it feels like it is addressing, like, the past, again, decades of characterization where Amy just had nothing to do except follow Sonic along.
It is funny because you used the words Amy's story arc, and immediately that changes things in terms of Sonic gameplay.
Right. It's not, I feel like where she ends up at the end of this game is not going to be undone in the next title, because this is where you encounter the Coco and realize that the Coco are living beings, but also like Sonic and Amy experience, like, memories interacting with them, like flashes of like, what the Coco used to be. And, just to, like, bring it out, because the game's like, the islands were inhabited by a race called the Ancients, and they're called the Ancients because they are, said to have been, like, came to this planet, like, tens of thousands of years before anything else, like, came about or evolved. Like, they are literally the if you want to use a tacky description, but, like, the ancient aliens, progenitors, without, like, the baggage that conspiracy theory has in the real world. And the Coco appear to be, like, remnants of them. And I think you find out that they were never intended to, like, hold their spirits like some kind of, like, uploaded thing, but it just kind of happened. You see the Ancients, like, carrying the Coco with them, like, as
like a lucky charm,
little talismans. Or just jewelry. And, when they got all wiped out, like, some of their thoughts and feelings stayed behind in these, these little goobers. I think Amy's one is they're trying to reunite, like, the two lovers, and the vision they get once they reunite them is, they reunited just in time to both be, like, killed by this enormous, like, show of force. We don't even see what it is. It's just a explosion. And it almost seems like when this happens to Sonic and his friends, like, they are experiencing the emotions as well, like, they're caught up in it. And it really seems to knock Amy for a loop. Like, she, Sonic straight up asks her, like, hey, you just need some time to work through it? And she's like, yeah, I think I do. I'll catch up with you later. And Amy, when they finally, reunite for, like, the final main story conversation, basically says that she's realized that, that she's got some growing up to do. Like, she's always going to like Sonic, but has realized that she maybe has, like, lost sight of herself. Like, she's literally, like, hit that part of adolescence where you kind of have to decide, who am I as a person?
Hey, still thinking about the Coco?
Yeah, and more. I'm not sure what happened, but I know what I saw. A love that transcended time. I believe in that power. When this is over, I want to share that love with the world, even though it may take us far apart.
I know you'll do great. I want to hear all about it when you come back.
It just feels like such a wonderful evolution of how Amy started as of having basically nothing in Sonic CD, coming back from Adventure that was starting her like lifelong crush on Sonic, ending that game saying she's going to be more independent, and then media just constantly like, she's always chasing after Sonic. It's funny, she's the silly girl. And then getting to stuff like Forces and the comics where it's like, well, she's a good people person. She's good at leading, and this just feels like the ultimate culmination of where the future holds for Amy Rose, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
It is interesting that she spends this time talking about how much love she has to give to the world and spread to the world. That could come across as some really cheesy ass dialogue, but it doesn't, because all of this has been written so well, and Cindy Robertson gives it all the gravitas that you would not expect from Amy Rose.
Yeah.
Yes. She's another performance that sounds markedly different because it's much more relaxed. It's one of those to where no English voice has never really tried to copy Amy's Japanese performance by that actress, because I really love Amy's Japanese performance, but it seems like one of those kind of similar to Knuckles, to where it's just kind of hard to translate into into an English performance to capture the same kind of like subtleties in the ways of speaking in non-Japanese. And so I really did enjoy like Cindy's, like I said, it's very much more down to earth. It's less bubbly because she's delivering a lot of very heartfelt, like serious dialogue that like you said, could absolutely, if was not pulled off well, just sound like dumb, cheesy bullshit. But I don't think it does at all. I think this strikes the perfect balance that previous Sonic games have hit, where it is self-serious, but in a way that does not dip into parody. Like you said, like it's what Sonic 06 wishes it was.
Yeah.
Like you can have, I way back in the day, we talked about how I love Sonic Adventure 2 for being melodramatic and self-serious, but not dipping into self-parody or being so over the top that it's ridiculous. I think, yes, this is a great way to start that with this very heartfelt conversation between Sonic and Amy, like two characters that it's, for me personally, like I used to dread seeing together because I hated their dynamic until now.
I think, like, not to get too far, like, off of Frontiers, but we've been getting a better Amy for a while,
yes.
Like, slowly. Like, I think in things like Sonic Boom, weirdly, even though that's in a different interpretation of the character, helped, like, shape Cindy Robinson's performance of Amy to be less like Minnie Mouse, which she was kind of doing, and more like an actual character. And, of course, the IDW comics has been doing some interesting stuff with her, too. And so now we're finally seeing this reflected in the games, and it works.
Yep.
Even Amy's, like you said, like she has so much love to share with the world, is even like gosh, I mean, I feel like I get into like even like the spiritualism of that she's almost like she's like, I got to take a gap here and figure out what I believe in myself, and you're not going to be part of that, Sonic, but it's okay. It's she's not breaking up with him. She's not saying like you're bad for me. She's just saying like I got to do this on my own. And I love that Sonic is like, yeah, and you're right, Amy. I'm not gonna disagree or stand in your way. I'm gonna encourage you.
Yeah.
And
it is interesting to see that kind of spiritual side of Amy brought back, because that's got root in like early stuff with like the fortune telling and whatnot. So it's interesting to see that kind of played with a little bit more here.
God, if we keep bringing up the fortune telling, Dave Ballmer's going to be so mad at us because he has taken exception. He's like, oh, the people who bring up the fortune telling just like to reference the fact that they know the Japanese manuals. I can't believe they keep bringing it up all the time. Yes, we know you like Sonic. I like Sonic too, but I prefer when she had a crossbow.
Well, I'm not saying I also don't prefer that, but sorry, Dave. The canon is working against you now.
It's okay, Dave. We'll get you a glass of warm milk. We'll put you down for a nap.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? Maybe after Amy's gap year, she'll come back with a crossbow.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That'd be dope.
What if she dual wielded the hammer and the crossbow?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh man. That's you're getting again. I'm excited for what comes next.
I do want to mention on Amy. her growth in this game is just absolutely fantastic. We'll get to Tails later on, and I absolutely love his growth too. But Amy's growth and Amy's arc in this game is probably one of my favorite aspects of the game, because as we've mentioned, like ever since Sonic CD, Amy's, and we have to remember this, like this is all written by people, blah blah blah. But in the canon, in the fiction of Sonic, her chasing Sonic has always been her choice. She's never been forced to follow him. She's never been in a set of, I have to follow him or else. It's always been her choice to follow him throughout all these years. And so in this game, it absolutely makes sense for her to finally see that she needs to grow as a person and for her to finally start blooming. And like, I think Amy has always been, one of her defining characteristics has been her love specifically of Sonic. And so it makes sense for her to specifically say, I have a lot of love to share with the world. And for her to finally grow through that, like Sonic's always been her friend and he's never going to shove her away. But we've also seen the dynamic of just like, Amy, like get away from me. And I'm glad there's not like a specific line during any of this dialogue where Sonic says something like, "Oh, finally you're going to get off my tail," or anything like that. But he for somebody who, canonically in the past has shown some annoyance at Amy always tagging along, I appreciate the fact that not only does Amy realize this and is trying to spread her wings and grow, but Sonic is also in like the best, truest friend fashion be like, yes, I agree. And I support you with this. And also whenever you feel like basically just hanging out again, I will be here for you. And that, it makes a lot of sense with the long canon and history between these two characters. And like I said earlier, I think Amy's story arc is probably one of my favorite story aspects of the game in general.
It's like I said before, like all these characters still feel like themselves and still feel like adolescents, but feel like the characters we've known for this long. Like they have carried all of that forward. And I do want to at least acknowledge the way they went about like localizing this for Japan specifically, because the director of the game said like, yeah, we took the English script as a base and kind of like the very definition of localizing it is tweaked it to be more for the Japanese Sonic audience, which that might be a whole separate subject on itself. And, like reoccurring mention on the show, like Wendy has translated the Japanese dialogue because it is different. And I don't feel like I've spent enough time going through the whole thing comparing it to say whether I think it's bad or good. I think it is odd that it seems like the director for the game and one other person did it themselves instead of like a dedicated like Japanese localization writing team. So I have seen people point out that there are some things that just straight up break like continuity between scenes. I don't know. That seems weird. I think the one thing that stood out to me is they do seem to have tweaked Amy's motivation to be more, instead of like going out on her own, as about being a more complete person before she like pursues a relationship with Sonic. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily bad. It's just different. And I guess what I say is I don't know if you needed to like specifically change that, but we're not going to spend the whole time comparing the differences. Like I would just say, go watch Wendy's video. It's all right there.
I'll just say they shouldn't have changed anything because the script is really good the way it is. But anyway.
Yeah, like, aside from the obvious, like, there are a couple of, like, English idioms that I'm sure would have to be changed for Japanese, because that happens in the reverse. But, yeah, I don't really see why some of that was changed, but, hey again, that's probably a whole separate discussion. I'm glad the videos exist for us to see, and I do think the Japanese performances are very nice. Like, even if, again, I'm not fluent Japanese, but I like how they sound. But so it is cool to see also that Japanese cast that's also been around for almost the entire time, like, also approach these characters from a different tone. But I just wanted to pay some lip service to that. Like, hey, it's different. It's a little odd. It's not as extreme as some people pointed out in either direction, because it is just a different thing. Like, hey, the English script came first, but So, after this very heartfelt moment with Amy, Sonic collects all the Chaos Emeralds and turns into Supersonic, and the fucking coolest song that's ever existed starts playing. And
I'm sure we're going to get into the music.
Oh, we'll get into the music.
Yeah, like, it's just worth talking about how, like, all the bosses, you have to be supersonic. Yeah, that's cool.
We knew this from some pre-release. Instead of saving Supersonic for the the big bad is going to come out and we're going to get the Chaos Emeralds and believe in the power of love and whatnot. It's like, nope. Supersonic caps off the end island battle against one of these huge Titan enemies, which actually, they show up at the beginning of every island, beat the crap out of Sonic, and then he says, well, I guess I need the emeralds to even make a dent in these guys.
It is interesting that this is the first game in like a decade to really kind of re-emphasize Supersonic as a concept and kind of give it that, kind of demonstrate, so Supersonic getting busted out is a big deal, because for the last couple of games, it's been just the bonus you get at the very end. If you 100% it, and you can replay the stages with it. Like, it's been a while since we've gotten a Supersonic only battle aside from Mania.
Supersonic is straight up like a story, like part of the story of this game.
Yeah.
And I think by this time you have also encountered Sage, this mysterious hologram / robot.
This little tiny Rhea Island.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Rhea. Like,
I mean, yeah.
In case you didn't know, like in both Japanese and English, she is voiced by the same actress that has played Rei Ayanami. So we mention Frontiers wears a lot of its design inspiration on its sleeve. Sage, she's Rey. It's fine. It's she comes into her own later, but she
is her own character, and I can't wait to talk about that. Oh boy. But yeah.
On this first island, she appears in front of Sonic and says, "Go away." And he's like, "Why? Who are you? Can you help me?" And she says, "No. Die." And the Titan, smashes him against a wall. So
the whole island, it's pretty great. Sonic's just like, hey, can you talk to me? F off.
Basically. In the most computer PG way possible, yes.
Sonic says, can we be friends? And she just flips him off and disappears.
Does not tell her who she is, where she came from, but you can kind of say, well, she sure does seem to share some design elements with some, Eggman technology we saw in the beginning, but that gets revealed. But so Sonic goes super because they very much in the story in the game say he cannot inflict any damage on these Titans, which are bigger than any other regular enemy. I mean, the first one, again, looks very much like an Ava Unit 1, complete with the Glasgow smile and everything. But Sonic goes super, and we will go directly into all of the music as our final part for certain.
Yes.
But yes, it is it feels like the ultimate evolution of like Otani's like guitar focused Sonic themes, because it's just straight up like some speed metal.
Oh yeah.
And oh man, I love it a lot.
It's so good. Like, all of the Titan battle theme music remind me of like the best motivation music from character action games that this is right up there with the likes of Reinventions and DMC5.
Oh my gosh,
absolutely. Yes. And it goes to because Sonic still keeps a very similar moveset. In fact, he uses a lot of the his skill tree has unlocked, but the way it feels, the scale is just amplified by 100 because you're supersonic, man. And yes, like even the music, the lyrics to the music are like speaking to the fact that playtime is over. Sonic is unleashing his full potential and destroying these robots. And just to go back to the gameplay, I love, for the most part, how these battles feel. It feels the closest to me like maybe a more refined combination of parts of Unleashed, like the 360 PS3 Unleashed Supersonic and Sonic Adventure 2 battle with Final Hazard, where it doesn't, you're not just on a you're not just going straight towards an enemy. You have some freedom. You feel like you're actually controlling this powerful entity.
Yeah, the biggest sense that I got from all the Supersonic battles, as far as like story-wise, was at this point, this is a Sonic who knows how to control the supersonic form and knows how to control it well. I mean, in the past, he's definitely known how to control it as well. But like, I got this sense of confidence from Sonic that I don't know if I ever really got from his Supersonic before, where like he is so intimately familiar with this form. He knows how to like mess up these Titans like 15 ways to Sunday.
I even feel like some of the dialogue where he's like, well, I guess I got to get the Chaos Emeralds. You almost sense like, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it. He's almost a little disappointed because he knows like, well, it's over once I go super. Like, no, you don't understand. Like, I know how to control this. Like, this is it's over. I mean, the first theme song is called "Undefeatable" for crying out loud. But yeah, like the ending of this first fight is Sonic literally does which I don't know if little Goku did it first, but yeah, he literally rockets through the guts of this Titan and it incinerates it, which feels like something we haven't seen Supersonic do before, and I think is intentional, saying like, oh, maybe Supersonic was literally holding back, like some of those fights
he doesn't
against.
Care about killing these guys because they're not real.
Sonic has finally gone peak shonen.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that makes sense with the music. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that goes to speaking back to the game is not afraid of embracing that side of it. Like, yes, like, it is funny how it doesn't really conflict with the dialogue and story being more down to earth and exploring these characters, but it is also fully embracing, like you said, the Super Saiyan shonen anime over the top power struggles and quick time events, and it just works, man. I love it a lot.
Here's what I'm going to say about it, and I'm kind of, I guess, echoing Bobby Schroeder, whose whose essay about this game you should go read. There has, as much as I'm not the kind of person who buys into that old meta-era BS that Sonic fans on YouTube and Twitter like to spout about when talking about everything from Sonic Colors onwards, there has been, I would say, an element of almost kind of irony and kind of, like, not taking itself all the way seriously with Sonic, which is fine. Like, in the IDW comics, no, that's been, like, some heavy-duty stuff. But for the while, there's almost been this sort of, like, nudge in the ribs, sort of like, hey, Sonic, remember? Sonic, gotta go fast, right? And in this moment of, like, this boss battle being so... you use the word epic, but that's kind of the stuff which comes to mind when you look at this. Being so balls to the wall, like... just not caring about how silly this might look. This is fun. This is speed metal nonsense and epic anime shonen stuff, like you said. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, Sonic's fucking cool.
Yes.
And it sort of accepts that again. And yeah, you don't need Crush 40 for it, apparently, but you can get this.
Hey, if they want to cover some of these songs after the fact, I'm all for it. But I 100% agree. I think again, I don't want to go too much on a tangent, so let me keep my thoughts brief. I think I would even argue that as far as, like you said, the writing in Sonic games, particular from Colors on, the previous team of writers, I wonder if we could at least agree that maybe the franchise needed that, like more genuine humor, because Sonic has always been funny. Going back to the beginning, he has always been a smart aleck. He's always, interjected jokes, and I feel like that the franchise, the game series needed that at the time, and the negativity, at least from my perspective, comes from that the entire like identity of Sonic also seemed to embrace that, and I don't want to say it was a complete failure. It's just that some of it now looking back looks kind of bad. Like you said, it's like, oh, that's when the Twitter got weird, and you know, that's how a lot of jokes work. Is like for every 2 or 3 that land, you'll get 1 or 2 that are really, you know, flat. And it's, yeah, like the entire franchise seemed to be embracing the ironic part of it. And yeah, it just reached to a point where it's like, you did feel like even the official Sonic stuff was saying like, hey, remember how goofy some of this is, right? You know, it's a blue talking hedgehog. And, you know, you'll never catch me saying like you said, people who are just adamantly against like
Sonic should never have jokes. Sonic needs to be serious at all times. Whereas the Sonic I grew up with was really silly sometimes.
Yes, exactly. But now like Frontiers feels like, hey, this is what the franchise needs now. Is a balance between, yes, Sonic is a funny smart aleck, especially in this game. Like, we're fixing to get to Knuckles, where I love the way those two sons of guns talk to each other. But yes, fully embracing the other part of, like, yes, the fact that these talking animals are doing cool anime stuff. And yes, it is cool. It is capital COOL cool. And I am, you know, unashamed of saying that. Yes, I think that is, God, it feels good. Like, this is this is what has got me so pumped about this game. So yeah, Sonic defeats this first Titan, this insurmountable enemy, and then flies off to the next island. Oh yeah, he does. You know, he meets up with Amy, and she's like, well, doggone it didn't work. I'm still trapped in the cyber hell dimension. He's like, well, sorry, I'll do my best. And, you know, makes it to this next island. I think this is Ares Island, the desert, and gets blasted out of the sky by a big laser, which, you know, it seems like the fact that the islands have these Chaos Emerald containing shrines that, I think they say power a lot of the the leftover technology is probably contributed to the fact that he just got the emeralds knocked out of him again. But you know, I did go, oh boy, here we go. And to be fair, like, hey, back in the day, Knuckles just
I was gonna say
out of him,
Sonic 3 knocking the emeralds out of him.
Maybe it's not as hard as you would think.
And at least Sonic acknowledges it's garbage.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? Oh yeah, doesn't he say something like, yeah, I didn't want it to be that easy anyway.
Exactly.
Again, Sonic's funny. He's got jokes. So I think on this island you get a little bit more FaceTime with Sage. She starts being even more aggressive in her attempts to kill Sonic with the Titans. Although I think this is where she says, like, yeah, I can't control these, but I can point them at you and say, sick them.
Yeah.
And this is where you meet Knuckles. And, you knew he would be here if you saw the excellent prologue short. I love that immediately Sonic and Knuckles start bickering at each other, but I think it's very well acted. It's great written to where they are jabbing at each other, but then like half the time they stare at each other and then have a laugh. Like, it really does feel like the Predator is like, Knuckles, you son of a bitch. And, you know, the big bicep handshake.
I mean, that is kind of the core of this game, and how it treats its characters is kind of like taking them back to basics to really dig in deep on who these characters are and like the core essences thereof.
Like we said, like Knuckles seems very much to have gone back to like how I remember Knuckles as, Sonic has street smarts and like people skills, whereas Knuckles is very focused on, hey man, he's lived on that island his whole time and he knows a lot about it. He's very intelligent, but he lacks, he's naive when it comes to dealing with other people, which is why, I think it's so easy for him to get misled by Eggman. Why in, his scenario on this island, he's very focused on helping the little little Coco guys who think they're still in a horrible war conflict, where Sonic is like, "Are you sure, man? I mean, shouldn't you be worried about something else?" He's like, "Hold on, Sonic, I'm dealing with this little guy."
It's very charming, actually.
Yes. And then by the time like he starts seeing these ruins that look like almost identical to the Master Emerald Shrine on Angel Island, he kind of has like a crisis of faith. Like, that's where you literally get where he flashes back to Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
Which is a moment. Having him like the little flashes to the Sonic 3 and Knuckles like opening scene.
Yeah.
Just the sprites.
If it were me, I would have flashed back to the Sonic and Knuckles fight in Hidden Palace.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me. It seemed a bit strange. And also the cut to him being like, I can't lose these memories. And it's just this memory of him like chuckling at Sonic at the beginning.
That's one thing that I will say is that I feel like there was a plot point that got changed somewhere along the line of like being trapped in cyberspace loses their memory, like causes people to lose their memories. And I feel like they kind of waffled back and forth on whether they actually like were keeping that as part of the lore or not.
I suppose that's where the memory tokens came in, but they don't really acknowledge it too much.
Yeah, like I remember there was some cut dialogue that implied that Sonic was losing his memories as he started to get cyber corrupted, but again, that got cut. So it's like, it feels like they weren't really sure whether they wanted to dig in on that specific plot point or not.
Yep, it could have been a time thing. It could have been any number of things. Maybe we'll find out someday. I think I've heard Ian talk about in his Q&As where he's like, it's kind of out of my hands. It's not really my place, like to say as far as how much he wrote versus what made it into the game. But yeah, because I think you're right, because they are very much that would go right hand in hand. Of Sonic is affected differently. And as he's absorbing this cyber corruption to free his friends, like, it is starting to catch up with him. But okay, here's a weird thing. Again, small tangent, and also to deal with something else that's coming up. There's also a, hey, remember who Knuckles is moment in Sonic Prime, where he suddenly gets introduced with a flashback, but they go straight to Hidden Palace with the, like you said, the Sonic and Knuckles fight. And yet in this game, like you said, he maybe should be remembering the Master Emerald Shrine from that. I'm like, hey, swap those out. Yeah. they would fit better here, but hey, whatever, hindsight and whatnot. And I thought it was cute. The flashes to previous game happen a couple times, and I would say they are cute acknowledgements of past, at best, and like harmless at worst.
And also helps establish that, yes, classic Sonic is past Sonic again. Yes. Sorry, we f***ed up in Bosses. Yeah.
Thank God, praise be to the almighty deities in charge of Sonic continuity that they finally gave that garbage up. Oh boy. Oh, so yeah, the big thing here is, Knuckles realizes a lot of these ruins, he straight up says, like, this looks like the stuff on my island. And Sonic's like, oh, that's weird. I wouldn't know. But again, like, speaks to Knuckles being very intelligent and knowledgeable about his narrow purview of the world. He almost gets a little mad at Sonic, and he's like, I wish I could be like you. Like, you don't stay in any place for longer than a second. And Sonic's like, yeah, I mean, don't you think you could branch out a little bit? He's, maybe you're right. Maybe I will, take a nice vacation from my island after you get your butt in gear and get me out of this cyberspace place.
Yeah.
Ages ago, my people were wiped out by a cataclysm. I know the Coco faced something similar. It reminds me I'm the last Echidna, that I'm alone.
You may be the last, but you're not alone. You've got us, Knucklehead.
I'll admit, I do envy your lifestyle. Freedom to go where you want, when you want.
So do it. Get out there and live a little.
Maybe I could. But first I need to be back to normal. So hurry up and get me back to normal.
Anything to get you away from me.
Knuckles is also, kind of initiates in conversation because we see where the ancients via the Coco tried to build up these huge armaments against this force. Giant thick walls meant to protect this little city they have in the desert, and then we see this force just cuts through it like it was nothing. And we see all the spirits die, and Knuckles is like, oh, everything they did was pointless. I feel like it's a half-hearted callback to Knuckles being the one of the generals and forces where that didn't work out well either.
Yeah.
But and so he's kind of left feeling oh, everything that they did didn't work. And I think that sends him down the path of what if what I am doing, the only purpose I've had in life, what if that is what's the point? This Master Emerald.
I think they're also kind of digging in deep on Knuckles wanting to quote unquote save the Coco because of his own kind of internal feelings of guilt and loneliness because he is the last of his kind. I feel like this is the first game to really acknowledge and dig deep on that in a good long while, since at least Adventure, maybe.
I was about to say since the first Adventure, where he has his his intro and outro closing soliloquies about what does it mean to be the guardian of this island.
I mean, it's the first time we've actually got into anything relating to Angel Island's history since Sonic Chronicles.
It's not canon, doesn't count.
Yeah, not anymore. This one also, once you collect the emeralds, you get to fight the scary sky dragon is supersonic, and again, it's just different enough to feel unique, but not too much to where I feel like it's. I still think the first supersonic battle is my favorite, but all of them.
Yeah, but at the same time, chucking a giant sky dragon into a mountain and then letting it get hit by its own missiles into its mouth and do the anime inflating and explode thing. That's pretty rad.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. See, they're all good in their own merits.
I do like that this one has this Doomsday Zone quality of chasing after through space, or a space in this case.
So, I mean, we've talked about gameplay-wise how the third island, Chaos Island, is, it starts to kind of get long in the tooth. However, this is where you find Tails, and, I mean...
Oh, bless.
It's really good. I mean, I don't want to go past without acknowledging that, this is the most Dave B. Mitchell has, had to say as Knuckles.
This is the first mainline game he's gotten to voice Knuckles in, because the only other game he did previously was Team Sonic Racing.
I feel like he really has come into his own as far as the performance.
Yeah.
Like I said before, he's not really trying to copy Knuckles' Japanese performance, and I don't think any English Knuckles ever has, but I feel like he's come into his own as far as he's just trying to voice match Travis Willingham before him. I feel like he gives Knuckles a somber quality while still having there's a bit of comedy when he starts raising his voice, especially in some disagreements with Sonic. He sounds a little silly, and I think that goes towards it, where at the same time when Knuckles is fighting, specifically his fighting efforts sound serious. He doesn't sound like a big goofy guy throwing punches.
There is a quality to his performance where it's a bit there is a bit of a meathead to his voice, a little bit, and I'm not always on board with when they do that with Knuckles. I don't. This isn't me criticizing the actor. It's more of just the direction thing of my name is Knuckles, that sort of thing. And we would hear a much worse version of that kind of performance in Sonic Prime. And again, no offense to the voice actors, it's direction. We know. But for the most part, I really do like Dave B. Mitchell as Knuckles.
Yeah, he's a very, just looking at his credits, he's a very prolific actor. Yeah. He does a lot of big meathead characters, and I think he's shining because this is a very complex version of Knuckles. He is not being just boiled down to, I'm angry and stupid, so I'm going to punch the problem.
I mean, he does a bit of that, though.
Yeah.
There is one point where he's willing to throw hands with Sage, who is a small girl, and that is hilarious.
And he does block that laser blast she shoots at Sonic, which is, is hard as, it's hard as nails, man. Yes, they give Knuckles cool things to do, and so it seems much more like part of his character when he is confused, and his performance reflects that. So, yeah, definitely wanted to give props for that, because it's kind of the first time we've got to hear a long form of that Knuckles. So yeah, Tails is on Chaos Island, and immediately this poor child is thrown into self-reflective spiral as Sonic is just trying to cheer him up.
Poor sweet Tails.
I know.
Feeling the dreaded after effects of being in Sonic Forces. That's the best way to put this.
Yeah, basically, it's. I mean, we've said meta like it's a bleepable curse word, but the fact that Tails' whole little story bit here, like he fills in a lot of like where he is confirming things that Knuckles thought, where he is saying like, oh no, yeah, like all this technology is like tens of thousands of years old and is more powerful than like anything we've ever said. Like he starts talking about, the space colony arc and the egg carrier and stuff like that. And which I don't even know if you could approach it in the vacuum. I've seen people criticize like, this is an island where they just say, hey, remember that game? And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, we've had generations of games where, no, I would say not a bad example because, a lot of that is classic, where in the story, the characters never acknowledge like other adventures, like maybe a little bit, but not at this level. You know what I'm saying? Like something like Lost World, which again, like I don't really have a problem with the story of Lost World, like as a concept, but that feels like one episode of a cartoon with no continuity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think Frontiers has earned some of these callbacks, especially from a character like Tails, who, like we said, like is resolved by Sonic reminding him.
Sonic, am I a burden to you?
Wow, and how did you come to this well thought out concern?
Whenever there's a crisis, I'm either running away or standing on the sidelines. You're always rescuing me when all I do is follow you around.
Hey, who was it who stopped Eggman from blowing up Station Square, huh? And who broke me out of prison, or saved me from the Deadly Six's trap?
Then I'm wildly inconsistent.
Dude, relax! You've got brains like Eggman, speed like me, and can fly with your butt. It's okay if you still need help sometimes. That's just part of growing up.
When did you get to be so insightful?
I have my moments.
Okay, the fact that Colleen like got to play Tails in the Sonic movie, and we've already talked about how much we liked like how Tails is in that movie. Like he is a perfect combination of the classic little bro Tails and also the boy genius who is supporting Sonic with his his intelligence and his gadgetry.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, outside the movie, this is the best written Tails has been in years.
Full on agree.
Appropriate on the 30-year anniversary of his first appearance.
True. Yeah,
you get the year of Tails.
Yep. It's the fact that he straight up asked Sonic like, do I even contribute anything to your adventures? And Sonic turns around and is like, yeah, bro, what are you talking about? Don't you remember when you saved the entirety of Station Square and, saved me from the Deadly Six and all this other great stuff you did?
A scene that echoes like a scene that we talked about and gushed about in the Sonic Champion story, also written by
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Oh, come on, bro. Are you still mad about being bumped by Honey?
Yes!
Why? Win or lose, that's one step closer to the Chaos Emerald.
Because she made me look like an amateur in front of the whole world.
Alright, so that was embarrassing, but everyone knows that you're my go-to guy. What's one fight compared to all the times we've kicked Eggman's butt? Tails, the kid who keeps Sonic running. Tails, the hero who saves Station Square. Tails, the guy who took one for the team and didn't mope about it all day.
Yeah, I get it already. Thanks, Sonic. I just feel like I've got to prove myself sometimes. You're a tough act to follow.
Yeah, well, I count on you to follow and watch my back.
And Tails throws it back in his face. He's like, well, how about when I freaked out when Infinite attacked? And he was like, yeah, man, you were going through it.
Yeah, dude, you're 8.
Yeah. you're like, okay, you're younger than all of us. You are still, yeah, man. But he basically, he has a heart to heart and says like, that is part of growing up, man.
Yeah.
Like, and you can't be so hard on yourself that you can't ask for help. You know, he's like, I ask for help. Like, I ask you for help. And he's like, oh man, it's so
good. You could comment, like some people have commented to be like, oh no, they shouldn't canonize that Tails was a terrible character in Sonic Forces. Or do you want us to do? Ignore that happened? Yes, maybe. But also we should like look at this and be like, no, we need to recontextualize this and give a reason to why things happen and give us a chance to have this character development for Tails as a result of something bad.
Yeah,
turn it around.
I even think it's stronger for the fact that he starts out, you know, he frees him from cyberspace and immediately launches into analyzing everything, and he's using very big words, and you're like remembering like, oh yeah, Tails is so smart. He's such a little boy genius. And then slowly starts to lose his confidence, and you're reminded, Tails is also a little kid compared to Sonic. You know, Sonic is a cool teen, he's a cool adolescent, whatever, but Tails is one of the characters who is forever like younger than Sonic and is still a kid. You know, he still puts his little two-tailed logos on every little invention he makes, and it's adorable. And Sonic acting like a big brother and saying like, that's part of growing up, man. Like, you're going to make it through and you're going to be stronger for it. And like you said, recontextualizing Forces, which, you know, we know was just a mess of development, including the story, but recontextualizing that as, Tails was freaking out because he's a little child who was traumatized by seeing Sonic, you know, quote unquote, killed and captured and tortured for 6 months. And being able to put that into this as again, another crisis of faith moment. That's a running theme in this whole game.
Tails' characterization is miles ahead of what it was.
But it is, again, like Jake brought up with Amy, like, it does call back to Adventure, where Tails ends that by saying, you know, I should be more independent. And it seems like, years later now we are finally getting the other shoe is dropping. And it's really good. You know, it quibbles with playing Chaos Island aside, like, this is really one of my favorite moments of seeing Sonic and Tails, the dynamic duo, like, just have some really great, I would argue even beautiful moments together.
There was so I said earlier, like, Amy's story arc as a whole is like one of my favorite story moments, but like, as far as dialogue, the dialogue between Sonic and Tails throughout all of Chaos Island is like my favorite specific dialogue of the game, because I was trying to find it in our Discord chat and I couldn't find it, but I do remember it was a kind of like midway through like the story part of that island, maybe a little bit past that, but Tails was still feeling down on himself, and Sonic literally said something along the lines of like, do you want to just talk about it? And that just really stuck out to me. Like, this is like we still got some more story to talk about, but this game is like a maturation of the franchise and the story of Sonic as a whole, and we're seeing that with Sonic, like, funny enough, slowing down to be like, Sonic is actually taking somebody else's mental health into concern, because, you know, Sonic's always like quick to push somebody out of the way of like something falling or a speeding train. Like, he's very focused on the physical health of people, and that's very, 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 very important. But in this game, he focuses on people's mental health, and that's so cool. That is so awesome. That is mature in the best way, not like boobs, gore, bad words.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% on the money. And like we said, it works because the story itself takes it seriously, and I don't think it's against any like past portrayals of Sonic either, because he does have his moments where I think I said it in another episode. Oh, I think I was talking about the ending of the first series of Sonic X. The last thing he says to Amy in the original is mute, and I said, but I believe that Sonic said what Amy needed to hear. And I think that's a good aspect of Sonic's character, that especially with his friends, and especially in this situation where they are technically in danger the whole time, like he doesn't really free them from cyberspace until, later. And even then, like it kind of immediately gets undone. So I feel like Sonic is intentionally like knowing when to, like he jokes with Knuckles, they have, they get up in each other's faces and have a laugh, but then he doesn't keep doing that with Tails because, like you said, he perceives Tails' like emotional state, and yeah, like you said, just says like, hey, put the brakes on, we need to talk this out. And it just feels really good to have all of those aspects of Sonic's character explored in a single title. It's instead of like, oh, this is one with a jokey Sonic, this is one with a self-serious Sonic. It's like, this is a fully realized a complete Sonic.
Yeah.
Sonic has come a long way from running ahead of Tails and saying, hey, you made it!
Come on!
Come on, step it up.
His encouragements have gotten much more complex.
Yes.
I just wanted to talk about something that we kind of brushed over when we started on this Tails topic, and that's, you mentioned the references and how how many fans are up in arms about the very fact that they keep talking about things. And I do have to say, like, sometimes in Chaos Island in particular, the references to old games got a little bit like, oh god, what are they going to reference next? But at the same time, this feels like a mission statement from Ian Flynn to be like, hey, the things that happened in previous games? They matter now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about every possible one that this reminds me
I think
of.
that was kind of a big mission for Ian, is to make it feel like, this isn't a thing where every adventure is self-contained. We want to really make this feel like this is all part of a grander narrative, and to make it feel like, those things that happened did happen, and everything is important and a step along these heroes' journeys.
If I could just say, like, as someone who, like, I consume a lot of media outside of Sonic, so I'm not trying to be like that guy who only reads Sonic media or whatever. But yeah, I've read Ian's writing for a long, long time now, like the Archie series before and after the reboot, and IDW, and also, again, I always try and emphasize that IDW and even like the Sonic game writing team, like it is a team. Like the guys talk about how, Ian's the head writer, but he bounces stuff off of like the other writers and artists. And I just don't see the Family Guy-esque, hey, remember that? That criticism that people levy at his writing for acknowledging other stuff that has happened in the Sonic franchise. For me, it always feels like, it feels like these characters acknowledging adventures they have had previously, if that makes sense. And so, hey, I'm not saying...
And they should.
Yes, and I think so. I think that builds up this universe in a good way. And I'm at the end of the day, I'm not saying if you don't like his writing, I'm not here to evangelize you to like Ian Flynn's writing, but because maybe you just don't like it. But yeah, it just always comes across as weird to me when people level that at his style of writing, where to me it feels like it is a positive building up of these characters' personality and the universe as a whole, to where it feels like things matter.
It's really weird to me whenever fans come out and being like, this new thing which is improving the game, I hate it.
I mean, basically, if I wanted to be really mean, I would really get down to like, I think you got personal problems you need to take care of before you start talking about how much you hate this aspect for no reason. But I don't really want to do that. But so all the little things, you know, when Tails is saying like, this laser is really powerful, and Sonic is like, yeah, you mean like the egg carrier that, you know, shot the tornado? And he's like, I think it might be more on the scale of the Eclipse cannon. And Sonic's like, whoa, that's pretty big. Remember? That blew a hole in the fucking moon. You know, like that's where it lands for me, is they're acknowledging like, yeah, I remember when the Eclipse cannon blew a hole in the moon. So saying that it's more powerful than that is wow.
This is where, so like, I just to cap this off, there are 2 points in why I think this is good. Like, you could say like, oh, well, it's not natural for people to constantly make references to things. And I'm telling you right now, even though the Sonic characters do not have ages, when they get to our age, you start thinking about, oh yeah, this thing, that reminds me of a thing that I remember from my past. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh man, time. Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is our entire podcast in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing reminds me of thing. People do that.
And you know what? Like, real life example here. Like, a day or two ago, my wife and I were driving around and we saw something, and she said that it reminded her of something, and then I said it also reminded me of something, and then she said, we're starting to turn into those adults who say, I remember when. And I mean, like, it is something in media when you see references like, I think there is like a Family Guy effect to this day in media when there's like a reference to something, because we always have that Peter Griffin voice in the back of our head saying, remember the time? And but I mean, like, maybe it's something we don't want to acknowledge as people, but like, as we grow older, we inevitably will say, I remember when. And I can also, another real world example, I work in a place that has a lot of old people, and they say things were better when blah 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 back in the 1700s, and
that's some old people.
Yeah, the crypt keepers. But I mean, like, you know, if you take a moment to stop and think about, like, you know, as adults, even as teenagers, like, teenagers will say like, I remember when. And that'll make us older people cringe a little, but
I found my dad's PS1 from when he was a kid.
I just saw that the other day. Oh boy!
Character in Transformers says, "What even is a cassette deck?" And I turned to dust.
I think y'all are definitely on the money, and we could probably have a philosophical discussion of
fist fight.
The right. No, I would hope not. Maybe it would devolve into that. But no, I think, yeah, this is not the podcast for it. But I mean, there literally is like philosophical discussions to be had about how the rise of the connectivity of the internet also kind of contributed to the death of the monoculture. And this is, you know, from a very like American perspective, but like, you know, we're not all sitting down at like 7 p.m. to watch like the same TV show on Channel 3
right.
Anymore, where we're streaming things. And so a lot of, I think that contributes to that. And, you know, I don't really know how you can tie that back to the references in Sonic Frontiers, but all that to say, I agree with you. And yes, I think other people feel that as well. And I think this does a good job of portraying these characters in a realistic way.
Yeah.
I also had a second thing. The second thing I was going to say is that, considering the overall arcing story of this, referring to things that happened in previous games and acknowledging them is quite important. Just saying.
Yes. Okay, I think it's time we've got, Amy, Knuckles, and Tails. They're not doing okay, but they're all right. So
we've been glossing over the inclusion of the most important character.
Yes, I was wondering when we were going to talk about him.
Would you like to try?
Oh!
I'll let you borrow a ride.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Okay. Yes, I love this. I think this is the ultimate, you said it's technically the year of Tails, but I think we're also in the middle of the big renaissance.
This feels like an Ian thing. Like he was probably the one who pushed for big. I bet.
Yes, okay, can we put big? Can we do a fishing mini game? Which I don't know. I'm speculating, but yes, you can find it is a cyberspace level, but Big's just hanging out by these cyber ponds, and Sonic literally says, Big, what are you doing here? And he says, well, I was fishing with Froggy and I just ended up here, so I figured I'd keep fishing. And this is, man, I love, first of all, I love Kyle Bear. God bless him.
Just a great dude.
But I think this might be the ultimate, like, realization of this Big who is laid back, still has that lilt to his voice, but hey, man, I think I've made it a running gag on here is that Big has had all his shit figured out since 1998. Yeah. and everybody else has just been catching up with him. And I think this is the ultimate example of that, to where, hey man, it's going to be okay. You want to fish? I got an extra rod. And, you know, we talked about the game is abundant with resources. And yes, this is how you get, you know, when you make it to the fourth island and you're like, oh, I've got 10 levels left in speed, and you go to the fishing mini games and they're just throwing stuff at you. Cocos, upgrades.
That was definitely how I maxed out my Cocos.
Yep. There's not much too big. He, you know, I guess you can assume at the end of the game, he safely made it back to the pond he was fishing with Froggy at. But, yeah, he's great. I love him in this.
Such an easy fishing game. I don't care. It's just fun.
It is one of those things in the game where you can miss the fishing right away, except it does actually teach you how a lot of the late game quick time events work.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So, you know, again, hindsight, but yes, it's very easy. I love that it gives you a split second. It very much reminds me of the fishing mini games in Yakuza. Like, you get a close-up of Sonic eyes flash across when he reels the fish in, and I almost expect him to go, you know,
oh
yeah, or
wow. Wow, you got a tire.
Which is cute. Okay, it gives you more resource coins for like fishing out garbage, because there's a whole bunch. It's almost like an Animal Crossing-esque like Fishopedia, but you can also get like garbage like tires and cans and items from Sonic games and badniks, and it gives you more coins for that. And I love. Oh, I should have saved it, but it was somebody on Twitter I think said like, oh well, Big's the one giving you coins. Maybe he's more happy that you're cleaning up this, you know, polluted pond by getting the garbage. And he's like, oh, thank you, Sonic. That'll make Froggy happy. Anyway, I thought that was super cute.
The reason particularly I wanted to mention it before we start to get into like late game stuff is that one of the things you can get from Big's coins is the Egg Memos, which are some of the best lore drops in the game.
Oh man. So this is where these are literally little digital cassettes that by the way, we have been checking in on Eggman. He's just trapped in cyberspace with nothing to do except talk to himself, and some of these logs really reflect that. And you know, we've talked about how nuanced the performances are. Oh man, I mean, again, God bless Mike Pollock. I think this is some of the strongest Eggman just that has ever existed.
And he's done so much great Eggman work over the years, like, of different kinds.
Yes.
He's done the hammy 4-kid stuff, he's done the more sort of snarky stuff from Colors, and then he's done, like, the really understatedly funny stuff from Sonic Boom. But this is something else.
I won't jump ahead, but there are some very emotional moments near the end where I'm like, man, that is the kind of role I aspire to be able to perform one day, is this complex, like, voice cracking. Oh man, I mean, again, it just speaks to, like, Mike is also a guy who has hundreds, if not thousands of credits. He is he's just a damn good actor's actor. And it's so nice to hear him. Yes. Like you said, take this huge, boisterous Dr. Eggman screaming villain figure and be able to also perfectly in character, like, deliver some very personal stuff here. But yes, you get these memos, and a lot of them are very funny, like introing, like, what was Eggman doing here? And it's, he discovered the ancient technology. And basically cyberspace is like, exists physically, but is like a huge cloud storage hard drive, except it's big enough to contain like the memories of an entire civilization. And I feel like the game itself plays with, I don't know, I mean, I think anybody listening should try the game Soma, which kind of talks about like some similar like philosophical like sci-fi storytelling of like, well, what does it mean to be like a person? Like, if you could copy your brain into a robot, would that robot be you? The aspect of the soul and like preserving consciousness and whatnot. And that approaches it from like a horror aspect. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but there are similar themes in this where like the ancients as a race seemed obsessed with like, we have to preserve every part of ourselves, like not just through the things we build and leave behind after we physically pass away, but what if we need to preserve our like thoughts and desires? And that's what cyberspace is. And of course Eggman thinks, well, that sounds like something I could use. That's why he developed Sage, who is a program that exists both in like cyberspace and the physical space. It's Reboot. She's a guardian. I guess, kind of, sort of. But of course, when he plugs Sage into cyberspace, she immediately realizes like all of these Titans are released, and also realizes like the big baddie at the end of the game is there, and it's absolutely going to obliterate Dr. Eggman. And that's why she pulled him into cyberspace and said, no, you're safe here because they're out there now and you can't come out. And the fact that Sonic is trying to, open cyberspace is a threat to Dr. Eggman, which is why she is treating him as it's programmed in her, but is why she is treating Sonic as an enemy not worth conversing with. The memos themselves, like what are the big ones?
There's a couple of big ones. Like, it's interesting as it goes on, you see Eggman's opinions on Sage kind of shift as they continue, which is really kind of interesting to watch him struggle with the idea of, is this thing I made, truly like a sapient being? Did I create life? Should I be treating this as something more than one of my, usual robots? And him gradually coming to see her as like this living progeny of his own.
Should I respect her pronouns? Is legitimately more or less like
wondering whether she is an it or a she, and then kind of realizing that he is referring to her as a she on her own, like apropos of nothing.
After saying, I never really knew my cousin.
That's
Maria.
the other one.
Like, dropping everyone's jaw at once.
But yeah, he literally does, like, he literally does in that one was saying, like,
Sage has been crucial to my survival here in cyberspace. She's the best. It's a program. I wonder if she has a preference.
Like you said, to go back to Jake talking about Sonic, like, like recognizing his friend's mental health. Like, yeah, Dr. Eggman, like, literally, like you said, coming to terms with he's created life and should respect it in that aspect is... the first time I heard it, it threw me for a loop. I was like, okay, I need to hear that again. And then, yeah, just straight up says, like...
I never really knew my cousin Maria. Everyone spoke of her like she was very special. All that love for someone who was gone when I was right there. But I have to wonder, back then, was she anything like Sage is now?
That is such a...
It says so much!
We've never had that to this point. We don't know. We've never known what he feels about this, like, legacy character who's not even been around for a long time, but has been so important to another character in the franchise. Yeah. And suddenly... in this, like, fishing minigame.
And it's such an interesting, like, way to look at it as, like, the root of where kind of all of this started for Eggman.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
You could extrapolate that, yeah, he was ignored after this tragedy, and his entire existence is like, but look at me! I'm Dr. Eggman! Look at me! and that was part of it. And oh my goodness, it's and it also does a good job because he doesn't give too many details. And I think a lot of the lore that's introduced in this game,
we've been dancing around it for a while, but
yes,
the ancients look kind of familiar, don't they?
and that's brought up in these, where Eggman literally says he's run tests on like the records of the ancients, and that they bear a striking resemblance in appearance and DNA to the god of destruction, Chaos, guardian deity that Tikal meets at the Chaos Emerald Shrine. And I mean, just to go into it, that like, yes, the ancients created the Chaos Emeralds. They're from another planet. They brought the Chaos Emeralds to the planet because some force was like swallowing them up and going to destroy their entire world. However, they were drawn to, Sonic's world, Earth, etc., by the Master Emerald, which was already there. So
wild.
Yeah.
Yes. So the fact that this happened before any other civilization, like, I don't think contradicts like even like the most obscure Japan only lore about like the Chaos Emeralds, because you could just say like, oh, what about the temples in Unleashed that use the Chaos Emeralds? Like, well, they got built after. Or I think there's even I think it's in like the Sonic Adventure Perfect guide, which the Adventure 2 one gave us like the secret files from Rouge that filled in a lot of gaps about Maria. But in the Sonic Adventure one, they talk about how I don't think the echidnas called the emeralds Chaos Emeralds until after the
Calamity.
I personally, I'm not super familiar with that lore, and I don't think a lot of people are, unless you're way digging the trenches. I don't think this contradicts any of that because it happened so long ago. The fact that the Chaos Emeralds were created by these outside beings, like, is just cool lore. And, explaining like where this water god Chaos came from is just also really cool. And I even like to think like, okay, we're getting long in the tooth here, but let me just throw this out here. I even think the fact that the Coco vaguely like act and look like Chow but aren't. Eggman also mentions in his logs that the ancients like died out after less than a generation from some unknown force, or they just couldn't adapt to the different terrain or atmosphere of Sonic's Earth. And the fact that they didn't straight up like show like Chow having a direct link to the ancients makes me wonder if they want to reveal that later or leave it vague. But I think the Chow are like the devolved forms of the ancient. And so
I think that's kind of what they're implying, is that, he says in one of the Egg Memos,
after countless years, their DNA corroded to the point they were completely transformed into a new species. Some kind of radiation affected them for eons, making them unrecognizable.
You look back at some of the, original deep lore, and it's that Chaos is a mutated Chow.
Yeah.
So what we have either is the ancients, their DNA corroded and they eventually devolved into Chow, and then one remutated back into Chaos.
Yes.
Made him look like his original kind of ancient progenitors. Or maybe they retconned it so it's the other way around, where Chaos is basically like the midpoint between the ancients and their full Chow de-evolution.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't put it past them retconning it, because I don't think it's ever stated in the actual game that he's a mutated Chow. That's just something that was added later.
I think so.
And honestly, it's not unlike Ian and the gang to retcon stuff that just doesn't seem to fit anymore, like getting rid of Christmas Island. Sorry, fans of Christmas Island out there, but that's no longer Sonic's hometown, apparently.
I even looked that up, because that was also in the same conversation, and straight up found people saying like, those internal Sega Japan documents, like, that is where Christmas Island came from, but they're not preserved like the other stuff. So hey, if it ever shows up again, maybe, but at the same time, it's one of those like, well, was that ever really canon? It's one of those to where I think I've said this comparison before, and I kind of hate to use it, but it's like the new like Star Wars, extended universe stuff, is that it's all canon until it isn't.
And all of this is kind of brought together on the fourth island, where we kind of get all of these different story flashbacks depicted as Sonic is activating these towers that will breach the barrier between dimensions. Ooh, I'm sure that's not going to blow up in our faces.
Oh, wait.
Air quotes around Fourth Island, by the way, because if you look around, you see this is just at the top of the first island.
There have been mod projects to try and reassemble them back into one island.
The final island is even like very similar to the first one. And, like we talked about, it's like, yeah, maybe they ran out of time or maybe they wanted to play it safe, but, hey, throw some snow on that last island and I'd be happy, but we'll see. But yes, this is also where, it is reflected visually on the other islands, but this whole process has been a pretty hard physical toll on Sonic. Like, he is being corrupted in the same way his friends have been imprisoned, and Sage is kind of hanging over his shoulder the whole time saying like, this is killing you, right? He's like, I'll be okay, it's for my friends.
When we've been seeing Sage slowly but surely, like, observe his relationship with his friends and sort of warming to the idea of Sonic being a pretty okay kind of guy and maybe someone that, Eggman could work with to solve this problem. But of course, Eggman's like, what? No.
She brings up the times they've worked together, like the Ark. He's like, that was purely out of desperation. I ain't doing this.
What about the other 4 or 5 times?
Nope.
It's a very good comedy beat as well. But you also, especially like Sonic and Tails and Sonic and Knuckles, all of Sonic's friends, like Sage is in the corner like watching and is, it is like a classic like, oh, this AI is developing real feelings and whatnot, or realizing that they are conscious in a way that like they have a soul in there somewhere, and
she has like a really, there's the sad scene with her crying and the kind of like deliberately clumsy vocal music, the song going on in the background, which is kind of funny that she's reflecting on all of her times with Eggman, and all of them are in cyberspace.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, Sonic does, he activates all these towers, seemingly like brings down all of the barriers between cyberspace and the real world. And
after some struggling platforming sections that I really had trouble with, but at least they give you the option to like cut out a bit of it and read like checkpoints made out of like these little levers that you can grab onto.
And I do love how they look. You are so high up in the air, and it is another one where they just look cool. Like you kind of forget that all you're doing is climbing the towers to see a cutscene, because they do look really cool. But Sonic, he does all this and it totally breaks him like mind and spirit. He is fully cyber corrupted after freeing his friends.
This is what happens when you spend too much time on the internet, kids. So yeah, despite the corruption, it does bring Tails, Knuckles, Amy, and Eggman out of cyberspace, but it also, surprise, brings out the voice that has been guiding this whole time, which, shocker, is the thing that was hunting the ancients all along. What? Because as we also learned from the flashbacks, the ancients were fighting against this thing even after it followed them to Earth, using the Titans to fight back against it, and one of them sacrificed themselves to absorb this thing into its Titans so that it could be sealed away. And it's out now.
Uh-oh. Yeah, we kind of get to know like several, they're never given proper names, but I think are referred to as like the hero is the one that sacrifices himself. And the ancients, they built the Titans to fight this thing, and it just wasn't powerful enough. Like they are, constantly referred to as so advanced, and that they created this cyberspace, and yet they were helpless against this force that was just wanting to destroy everything that they've built. And yes, the hero sacrifices themselves to seal the entity within their Titan, but in the process, like dies. Like I believe one of the other ancients literally says like, oh my god, it killed them.
Yeah.
And they are moved by his sacrifice and, imprison the Titan, all of the Titans in cyberspace. But yes, like you said, oops. Yep, the scary, mysterious voice was bad all along, and now Sonic is seemingly quote-unquote dead. But, his friends say, we can't let this, Sonic's the only one that can stop it, and give up their newly released physical forms to restore Sonic. And he realizes, like, all right, well, all the chips are on the table. Now I have to do this to save my friends and the world.
It does feel like, Sonic's degradation just kind of, like, goes away in that instance. I know they're giving away their freedom for it, but it almost felt like the big build-up just kind of led to Sonic being like, okay, I'm fine again.
yeah, a little bit. It, like we said, it might be maybe a cut sequence or two or a story thread, but I mean, it at least the theme of it that the whole time Sonic is in like physical pain as he is, unlocking his friends and saving them, and keeps putting it off like, yeah, but it's all going to be worth it. And then, yes, like seemingly sacrifices himself. And it also mirrors the cutscenes we're seeing with the Ancients, where the hero but Sonic and his friends are going to change the future. They're not going to do the same thing. And I think it still mostly works on that level, at least.
Also kind of mirrors the Metal Virus arc a little bit, with Sonic slowly getting infected over the course of the story.
Yeah.
And having his entire worldview challenged by everything falling apart.
Yeah.
Yep. So, this last island, instead of Sonic's friends, it's Sage, and this is kind of the ultimate, like, hey, now she's finally talking to him and asking him, like, why are you the way you are? And Sonic, kind of spells it out for her.
I think it's worth saying at this point that Sage is great. I just really, really like Sage. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this new original character in a Sonic game, because let's be honest, they're usually not good these days, but Sage
they're
is
pretty
just
hit
lovely.
and miss in general.
Yeah, infinitely so in some cases. But this character is just lovely. I just think she's a sweetheart. She's Eggman's little daughter.
Yes, yeah, like a well-worn concept in fiction. Like I said, this artificial creation of like becoming self-aware, and yes, framed it in this. And I mean, hey, like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, remember a couple of years ago I say a couple of years ago, when people were taking that one sprite in Mania and turned it into Eggette? I
was going to say, they saw Eggette and they're like, hold my beer.
Yeah. It's like, what if we took that concept? And yeah, I love talking about Eggman characterization, the memo where he literally talks about,
who says I can't create life, huh? Just a bunch of proteins bumping together. Anyone can do that. A true genius does it with code and electrons. And if I did create life, she would be brilliant and loyal and perfectly effective. And you know why? Because her dad is a genius. That's why.
Oh, man, it's just so good. It's, yes, taking that concept and putting it with Dr. Eggman, and simultaneously, like, making her into her own character with her own motivations in, like, the span of this one game. And it's wonderful. She is adorable. One of my favorite little bits is Eggman is talking to Sage, is like, well, I've really outdone myself. I don't know where I went wrong with Orbot and Cubot.
They are your creations, like me. That would make them like my brothers?
I suppose so.
And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Oh my god. Now I want to see that. I want to see all three of those goobers hanging out together.
Before I read all the Egg Memos, at first I was worried that, is this going to be like Eggman doesn't actually care about her that much? Because he seemed kind of dismissive at first. But then I realized, no, he really cares. Yep. That's what makes it so heartbreaking.
You really get a lot of fleshing out on this last island of Sage. And this is also, again, to go back to her color scheme is the Sonic shorthand for edgy, is she's red and black. With her eye color and then her white hair. But as she is like spending more time with Sonic, she's kind of shifting to like this blue and white, like, kind of angelic. Or the first thing, especially after that memo, is she does kind of look like Maria. And I wonder if that was intentional. But the fact that she is becoming her own person, is she is shifting into this, she's a different look. She's evolving. She's changing physically. So this last island, once you collect the 6th emerald, Eggman finally shows back up, and he's got the one last one. I think it's the purple emerald. And he, the whole time he's so like, yeah, well, I knew you wouldn't be quick enough, so I went ahead and picked it up for you, Hedgehog. And Sonic is very much, I think he throws something back at him like, yeah, well, I'd never want to disappoint you, Eggman. It's really good. It's Sonic is, realizing that this has happened before. And, also the stakes are high, but not enough to not throw a little joke in there.
Yeah. And so after all this, we finally get our 4th Titan battle with basically Ava Unit 1 with the big gun.
I was so overleveled by this point. I ripped through this in hard mode.
And I mean, we skipped over that. Hey, the night fight in Chaos Island is bitchin' too. But
big shout outs to the Reinventions moment when Sonic cussed the thing in half.
Yes, with the Super Psy loop, and oh boy,
so dope.
Yeah, I really like that this is where we get the title track drop of this orchestrated version of
I'm Here.
Slowly adding the lyrics as you go, which I quite like.
Yeah, it's a good touch. But the gameplay, like I've seen multiple people say, I was so overleveled, the fight is over almost immediately. But hey, it's the cinematic aspect of it holds up. But
yeah.
Okay, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say that if you're not playing on hard, the game basically ends here. So don't forget before this last fight to switch over to hard. I played the whole game on hard and didn't really find it that challenging or much of a difference. But that is so weird that, that's basically the only difference.
In some ways, I get why they did this. But on the other hand, I'm like, bit of a strange decision.
You defeat this final Titan, and instead of killing the entity, it is fully released, kind of zaps off into space, and Sage is like, oh god, it's gonna destroy the whole planet. We have to stop it now. And so she realizes she now can control this Titan, now that it is fully empty, and can follow Supersonic into space, but is pretty sure she's not coming back from this.
All we did was chase it out of its shell. It's retreating into space to regain its true form. Even Supersonic won't be able to stop it. I know what I must do. I must leave you.
I understand. Go. Fulfill your function.
Tells his cyber daughter to get into the robot and fulfill her function.
Yeah. And I feel like there was more intended for this last fight, because as it's starting, Supersonic is shouting,
"He took your home world. He took your lives. Are you going to let him do it all over again? I need your help. We can end this. Please."
I felt sure in that moment that they were going to have the Spirit of the Ancients or even the Cocos or something involved in that fight somehow, and then it just ended up being kind of nothing.
Yeah. It feels like you could say, is he calling out to the, the preserved spirits of the Ancients in cyberspace, since the barriers are down. But yeah, it sure does seem like he, that line was meant for something bigger. Because we said, if you're not playing on hard, Sonic says that, and then it shifts to the final QTE, and you get the normal ending. But if not, your perspective pulls out, you are actually playing as Sage and the Titan, and you get one more. We kind of glossed over that they introduced the little hacking mini games in Tails' section that are...
Somebody at Sega is a big fan of Ikaruga.
Yeah. Ikaruga, very reminiscent of the same sections in Nier Automata. And just shmups in general, shoot 'em ups. Your Tohos, your 1942s, etc.
Interesting change.
Yeah, the switching between the two different modes, though, is very Ikaruga.
Oh, yeah, it's straight out of Ikaruga, like you said. And, I mean, it feels fine. It is a little... I remember the first time it happened, it's a little jarring, kind of the same with the pinball minigame, which, hey, you either like it or you don't.
I had no trouble with the pinball minigame. Y'all are just bad.
Skill issue.
Pinball took me a while, but like I can look back on it and be like, it was okay.
The hacking minigames were practice for this because this is where you get the introduction of the villain, simply known as the End. It is this enormous planetoid, this beautiful purple planetoid, and it starts speaking to you with this double-layered voice. I'm pretty sure it's Cindy and Mike layered on top of each other.
Mortal, you have served your purpose. Now face your end. I am the all-consuming void. What can one mote of golden light illuminate within the abyss?
Countless stars, countless worlds, countless lives. All fell to me, all brought to nothing. All the teeming chaos of creation, brought to order, to neutrality, to nothing. I saw your mind as you ran through my prison. You have fought machines and gods. They were mighty. They were finite. I am infinite. I am nothing. You struggle as so many have done before. You will be consumed like all those before you. I saw your mind. Your courage never wavered. Why? Arrogance, ignorance, stupidity. I was contained once. Once. Is that why? My captors bent time and space. My captors built a whole reality to contain me. My captors burned their souls away to fuel their engines. And you?
You glitter. You fly about me like a gnat. I am inevitable. I cannot be denied. You strike this incarnation with all your might. It changes nothing. You are not brave. You are not victorious. No matter what form I take, the end comes for you all.
There is so much to read in there.
Yeah. Yes, like it's not just a destroyer, like say a Beerus, god of destruction, or even a chaos. It is the very concept of nothingness. This is what the ancients feared, that not only would they all die, but that everything that they had put into the universe would be wiped from existence. And oh man, we could go for an entire episode on what I think that means, like just in general, but combining this with like the themes of the game and even like not the OK Rock song, but the closing credits, that this really feels like some kind of statement on putting art into the world and leaving a legacy of like your accomplishments and what it means to have like that very concept threatened to be like wiped from existence. And whoo boy, it's a lot to deliver in the night, the 11th hour of a Sonic the Hedgehog game. Yeah. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't 100% on board that I really love it.
Yeah.
I never really drew that comparison, but now you mention it, yeah. I just feel like some sort of god representing some sort of like finality in the world is very much like, this is a Persona-ass final boss.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, with a speech that's very akin to kind of like GLaDOS's final speech in the first Portal game, where it's like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and like she's just going on and on and on, like to the detriment of the player, and then kaboom.
Yes, but
I'm not owned. So I scream
But yeah, basically, yes, this entity saying like nothing. You know, it's almost like not like the self-destructive nihilism, like taking physical form.
Yeah.
It's saying like, compared to the rest of the universe, you're nothing. Your friends are nothing. Your thoughts and emotions and your concept of love are nothing, because I'm going to take it all away. But yes, Golden Gnat, which is supersonic. It sure is, man. It's I love that, because yes, you make it through this, I'd say pretty challenging but fun, like just different section. It took me a couple of tries, but by the time I got used to like switching back and forth, it builds up. Again, like it's hard not to feel like that final section in a Nier game where
Nier was what I was thinking. Yeah,
and that's okay. Like, yes, take some inspiration from Nier. Some of the best storytelling I've played in games in like the past decade of the same concepts of like, really, what does it mean to exist in the universe as an individual?
It's hard not to see the end as like a big, representation of kind of that fear of death and of like being forgotten, not leaving a legacy behind, which is kind of what happens with the ancients.
You could tie it to probably like a lot of different specific events in Sonic history, but like one that I can think of off the top of my head was like the Archie comics came to an end just so suddenly and abruptly. And I'm sure that like Ian Flynn and the crew were like busy working on other things, but like Sonic Archie was a big thing, and I'm sure it made a lot of money for a long time. And for it to suddenly end, like,
yeah, it ended in the middle of several story arcs. Like they were putting out, and it was just gone forever. And they will probably never go back to that. And it is hard, and I've seen people talk about, again, we'll get to like the final closing song, but it's hard not to look at like, yeah, is there a little bit of like Sonic team in this? It's like, hey, they know what it means to make a bad game that nobody likes.
I think there absolutely is.
And, I don't want to get too precious, because we've talked about, and corporations, and I still believe all that, but thinking about the individual artists, or even a guy like, Iizuka, who has been the main producer for Sonic for longer than anyone else now, like, when they talk about, we are taking all of the feedback from Sonic very seriously, but like, it's hard for me not to think about like, they know what it means to get like really harsh feedback on a game, and for people to say like, this sucks and is a bad piece of media. And it's hard not to think of like, yeah, what if the last thing you did was bad, and that's the last thing you ever got to do? And you could do like a philosophical study from Sonic Frontiers. And, it's really neat. I think it's a nice way to cap off like some of the serious parts of this, and it feels good, because again, as we've been saying throughout this whole discussion, is that the game takes itself seriously when it needs to.
Also, the last boss music sounds a lot like Hopes and Dreams from Undertale.
It sure does.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh man, yep.
Doesn't really contribute to the discussion, but I just thought it was worth pointing out.
Hey, if you really try, you could say, hey man, Toby Fox and his small team sure did have a huge, like, cascading ripple effect on the entire game industry when Undertale came out, that is now being felt years later and probably forever.
Now or never!
Sage in her Titan does a fastball special with Supersonic, and you get one last final QTE, where he is just rocketing at, impossible, imperceptible speeds through the vacuum of space as Supersonic. And I love how it's so close in, and, the rocket soundscape is building up. And then after you hit the last one, it pulls out so far, and it's just Supersonic, the golden gnat rocketing across the screen.
Yeah, with that long streak behind him. Oh.
Yeah, gives me chill bumps. And,
that's art.
Yep. And then blast straight straight through this giant, the end planet, but it's not enough. It's doing one last,
It's gonna blow!
Watch out! He's up to something!
And, you felt that a self-sacrifice or something was going to happen to Sage.
The death flags were everywhere.
I was like, no, you don't have to do it, though, because I really like her. But they did it.
And I think I didn't pick up that, and it's clearer now looking back, okay, it wasn't going to make it to Earth to destroy it. It was going to blow up and take Sonic, with it. And this is the only point where there are a couple of cutscenes where the Ancients have a very boisterous vocals, which they're speaking I think it's a nonsense language. It sounds like the principal cast doing it. Yeah. But I noticed that although it is very anime, there aren't any anime screams, even from Supersonic. Not saying I wouldn't, if they were there, they'd be cool. But I said, oh no, they kept it. But this one simple delivery of when Sage realizes that the thing's gonna blow up and take Sonic.
No!
The way a single line from an actor can just convey so much. I'm just gushing and gushing. And yes, she rushes the Titan into the end to absorb the damage and throws Sonic back to Earth so he escapes it. And
please look after Father.
Yep, that's the end of the end. Maybe.
And of course, everybody back on Earth is celebrating, but cut to Eggman. I felt that pit in my chest.
The fact that nobody went and checked on Eggman, but I don't know, that was, I don't know if you could have pulled that off. the image of him falling to his knees after, seeing the shooting stars is so powerful in of itself.
Yeah.
Man.
It's he knew, you could argue that he was letting Eggman preserve his dignity after, or maybe he thought in the back of his head, what, the last thing he needs to see is my face, that I made it out, and his daughter did not. I don't know. I'm just speculating.
I mean, can you, maybe in another game, Sonic would have come down and been like, whoa, that was crazy. How you doing, Eggman?
I'm going to kill you, Sonic. I'm going to kill you.
I've lost all meaning in my life right now, so just let go.
Yeah, we're Sonic heroes.
I have a gun.
He does.
Remember that time I just had a f***ing gun? Well, here it is.
Okay. So yes, a touching moment. Yeah, this is where we get our first credits roll. And then, yes, here we get a great little mid-credits epilogue of everybody hopping back into the tornado. But they're, once they get off these islands, they're going on their own separate journeys. Sonic, Amy, Tails, and Knuckles. And Sonic, again, is well, whenever you guys are ready to get back together, I'll be there.
And Tails is like, yeah. And Knuckles is like, you got it. And Amy's like, Styx is canon.
Oh, yeah. that threw me. I was like, what, Styx? What?
Tangle 2.
Yes, Sonic talks to himself a lot, although, gosh darn it, those sure are hard to trigger in the game, so just go look them up on YouTube. But yep, he mentions all kinds of adventures and the Babylon Rogues, and Tangle from the comics,
I mean, you know what? Tangled has a 3D model in Sonic Dash, so...
Yeah, her and Whisper, yes.
Yeah, laying the groundwork.
Again, excited for the future as well as this game itself. But yeah, Amy just casually mentions
I wonder if Cream and Styx are free. Make a road trip out of it.
It was her appearance in Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games is canon to the main universe.
There's one thing that we can take from Boom is Styx, and you know what? I'm happy with that.
I know Ian has been fighting that fight for a long time, and I'm glad he finally won.
Yeah, I think, from what I remember, I think he just straight up asked, and they said, yeah, sure, why not? Go for it. So
just bring back her VA if you can. That'd be great.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I think so. She's got voice clips in the Olympic Games, so yeah, why not?
Fingers crossed.
And I'm only headed up from here.
So once you beat the game, either normal or hard, I can't speak to easy because I didn't play that, you get this secret scene, this end scene, where Eggman looks to be in one of the temples from one of the Starfall Islands, and he's got his computer hooked up to just some of the ancient technology, and he's typing away. And then he discovers something, and we see, we never really see his face, but we see an image of, we get to see the camera focus on the screen that he's been inputting commands into, and we see some sort of graphic come up, and then we hear...
Father?
That's my girl.
So yeah, so that's crazy because when Sage was in the final battle, I was just like, she was a really cool character. I think it makes sense for her to only be in this game. But now I'm really interested, because she's already had this crisis of faith and personality of first hating Sonic just cause, and now oh, he's not that bad. So I'm interested to see what the character dynamic going forward is now that Sage is back.
I can definitely see a future, even more lighthearted story where, Eggman is talking about, building Eggman Land and crushing that Sonic, and, Sage just popping up in his ear, and it's like, are you sure, blah, 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 and don't worry about that. Yes, save the world, and
I'll build a ride in Eggman Land just for you, Sage. How about that? We did talk about what flashes up on the screen, though, when Sage speaks. It's that symbol that we've been seeing throughout the game.
Yeah.
At various points representing cyberspace, and also popping up when, the Cocos would pass on, which is a thing I don't think we really mentioned too much about.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
Well, we did talk about how that, even though it wasn't intended that, yes, part of the ancients, will or spirits or thoughts are in the Coco. And so, yeah, when we've seen them fulfill Sonic and Amy reunite the lovers, Knuckles helps the separated platoon get back to the battlefield, and then Tails...
Yeah, the engineer finished the cannon.
Once they finish their purpose, they do move on. So it's less that the ancients are fully preserved in the Cocos, but just that the last strongest idea before they were destroyed or before they were uploaded to cyberspace remained. And it seems like the only exceptions are the Elder and the Hermit Coco, who talk about how they're almost I would almost say maintenance programs for cyberspace, to where they kind of know everything that's going on, but it's not their place to,
They're also missing some of the crucial stuff, and the Elder Coco talks about how he's got so much lingering guilt over all of his fallen brethren that he's not sure how easily he would be able to, let that go. So they got stuff going on.
Yeah, I think that's even where Sonic says hey, I know a time traveler. We could maybe figure it out. And he's like, no, we're not gonna mess with time. It's my burden to bear. I think that symbol is just supposed to meant to represent cyberspace. So I think it's saying at the end that Sage, because, they never really go into details, but because she is a simultaneously physical and digital, maybe Eggman was able to recover her from the Titan because it was directly linked to cyberspace or something like that. I think that's the significance of that symbol showing up on the his computer at the end.
Maybe so. Or maybe there's more to Sage than we think. Guess we'll find out in the future.
Yeah, Sonic Frontiers 2 Electric Boogaloo. Oh, goodness. Man, I said it, just reiterate that, the whole story to this game, I very much enjoyed playing it, but the story just really, gave me the warm fuzzies. I'm excited about Sonic stories in the games again. Again, not to say that I hated anything that we've had for a long time. It's just that was like a Twinkie in between meals, and this was like a buffet.
Yep.
And you know what? We might not have to wait 5 years to find out what's going to happen next.
I would certainly hope not.
Oh boy, yes.
They've announced a bunch of quality of life little features, but the big thing is more playable characters and more story content.
For free!
Yep.
All for free, yeah.
For free?
Yeah. Yes, I think they learned their lesson when they tried to charge people, what was it, $4 for Supersonic and Forces, and before we as a global society rejected that concept.
Hard.
The director, and I think Iizuka, has said that they consider Frontiers a new cornerstone for Sonic, so that this is a new, like, you know, if you considered the adventure era, the boost era, that is what this is. So I think they're sticking with it for a while, and the reception, as far as I know, has been quite positive, word of mouth.
Yes.
Like, not going to dig into, like, you know, I don't do Metacritic or whatever. That stuff's too weird, and you know, where do those numbers come from? Why do we still assign numbers to reviews? But the word of mouth I know has been quite positive.
If nothing else, I'm pretty sure it's still the highest rated Sonic game in years, or the highest 3D.
Besides, Metacritic is sort of a relic of the meta era of Sonic, so we don't need to change it anymore.
It all comes back around.
But hey, new story, new playable characters apparently. I don't know how much that's going to extend to. Maybe we'll know by the time this episode comes out, but maybe not.
Yeah. It's obviously coming in. It looks like at least three different updates or waves, but yeah, we'll see. Like you said, it's all free, so just strap in.
I would not be surprised if at least update 1 was out by the time that we put this episode out, to get the jukebox, photo mode, the challenge modes.
Yeah, I mean, something that I definitely saw is the fact that the arcade mode lets you replay cyberspace, but doesn't let you replay those boss battles. And oh boy, I've got a couple of saves just so I can go back and do that.
Yeah.
We won this whole time. We're not really talking about the music too much, by the way. Sorry, everyone. We covered the whole story, and that we've neglected the music for the most part, apart from the boss battle stuff. Jake, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. All right, let's do it. So I think one of the marketing campaigns behind this game is the music, and just how different it is to previous Sonic music. But I'm not going to say it's like a complete departure. It is, as I've said before in our Discord chat, it is a maturation of the music, whereas like the story is a huge stepping stone forward. As far as like the maturing of Sonic and his friends, the music is a big maturation from and I'm not saying this in any bad way, this is the really awesome butt rock is what we will call the adventure series, and even like into Unleashed and some of that, into just straight up metalcore. This is metalcore. But before we get into those really big pinpoint boss music things, I do want to, I think it'd be good for us to just take a few minutes to talk about some of the music that plays throughout the game that you hear while you're cruising around the open zones and through the cyberspace areas. Because I mean, yeah, those vocal tracks are freaking awesome, but I feel like it'd be better for us to give good due service to, you know, the other 98% of the music.
Yep.
I 100% agree with your assessment, because this does feel like not only, like you said, a maturation or a like a next level evolution of just like, because I mean, Tomoya Otani has been composing for Sonic for a long time, and this really does feel like something like super different that I don't want to put words in his mouth, but sure does feel like it would be a challenge for even a experienced composer, because I think I want to say that there's like some, if you broke down like every individual little piece of music, because a lot of the, like you said, a lot of the themes for the islands are dynamic and change. There's something like almost 900 pieces of individual music, I think. And the fact that, yes, like you said, the main vocal themes are very like you said, traditional Sonic, rock and roll, lots of cool guitars and some, metalcore, etc. But that a lot of the island music is very atmospheric, and it's there for almost 100% of the time. Like there's very little like, straight up dead silence, but that it blends together with the soundscape to like cultivate almost characters for the individual islands. I really like how I believe the music does change as far as like starting out on the island versus like the first major like story beat where you encounter one of Sonic's friends versus like when you collect all the emeralds and you're like traveling to the Titan, and then that's when you, especially on that first island, I know it kind of kicks in and you get like a very boisterous like, all right, it's time for the big boss battle.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, like, it's the kind of music, and I remember people having this discussion with Breath of the Wild to where it's not traditional, like I'm not exactly humming the island music, but I would miss it if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
Which I think just kind of goes with that.
Well, if you listen to the soundtrack, like each of the islands has their own set of movements. So that covers like the progression of the island, and I love that.
Yeah.
Like, you get like a different vibe for each one, but there's also that, like, throughout there's that somber feeling, and I love it, man.
And there is a lot of hey, my favorite, thing that I know about music is that the leitmotif of I'm Here, the main theme, does weave its way into a lot of those tracks. And, I like that. But I love some of the behind the scenes footage they put of like some of the sessions for recording for, I think it's Ares Island. Where, wow, some of the, like, looks like some very, like, unique instruments that I've never seen before from some of these studio musicians. And I love watching a studio musician in a recording session, just sitting there and just playing the most complex piece of music I've ever heard. Like they're sitting in the bathtub, like it's the most natural thing on earth. It's amazing to watch artists of that caliber work.
Yeah. I love just watching artists in the studio work too. Like when Sega was showing these videos of the musicians recording music in the studio, I love that, and it was reminiscent of when Nintendo actually showed their musicians recording music for the Mario Kart 8 like DLC parts.
Oh my god,
dude, man, I freaking love it. But yeah, I think the open world music, Jeremy said it at best, I think, where you're not humming along to it because like there's no super outstanding melodies, but it's so serviceable and it fits so incredibly well in the open world. I think transitioning to the cyber levels, that's where that's like the most different music. Like electronic music is no stranger to Sonic games, but like it's so... It also fits the cyber level so well because you are literally going to like a different world, and it kind of makes sense to have completely different music where it ranges from kind of generic like electronic level music to you have some levels that have straight up dubstep, which I haven't heard in literal years, but it works.
It's funny how they go to like nostalgic lengths without actually referencing any past music, because there are a few tracks that are like 90s house music going through this, and that takes me back to old Sonic times.
Something about it feels like the natural evolution of kind of the stuff they were trying to do with the modern and Avatar tracks in Sonic Forces.
Yes, which I really like those. Thinking back to things I liked about Forces, is I really liked those Avatar tracks with the the haunting vocals and samples. And I mean, it's probably playing right now because I'm the editor and I get to put it in. But I think there is the reason the marketing led with it, and people getting stuck trying to S rank that that 1-2 Sky Sanctuary.
Oh yeah,
level
I was just thinking about that one.
Disappear.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so cool.
Oh man, it's like you said, it does such a great job of standing out as this is cyberspace and things are different, and so it gets an entirely separate music identity that still has, like you said, tons of different genres of drum and bass and electronic and dubstep, but that not a lot of that is in any of the other music, so it is like, oh, that's cyberspace. This is the sound of cyberspace.
Yeah. The one problem is that, like, it's a little hard for me to kind of separate the tracks in my mind because all the levels look like one another. So it's like, even though every course has its own track, you kind of forget that they all sound different.
The biggest problem I had was not being able to appreciate the track on a, like I said, when I recognize Metal Harbor, I'm hearing those trumpets from Metal Harbor. Yes.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that cyberspace has its own identity instead of, if every time you got to a level you recognize if they just did a cool, a Generations-esque remix of that. I don't know. There's mods for that. I saw that there's already a mod where people just put in the music from the levels in there. So, that's what you want. That's that. But I agree with you, Jake. I appreciate that cyberspace has its own musical identity.
Yeah. And even from a story perspective, it makes sense because there's a point where Sonic literally says that the cyberspace levels they seem to be like recreations of places he's been in his memories in the past, and like in like a story narrative way, it makes sense for it to like visually it looks the same, but to distinguish that it's different, besides like the glitchy backgrounds and like kind of different level layouts, you have different music, and this is its own product. So
well, that's Ian Flynn trying to explain everything as
yes,
him for it.
Possibly.
So we've talked about the open world music, we've talked about some of the event music, we've talked about the cyber levels. Let's finally get into the big, awesome like marketing campaign, vocal tracks that are just make my happy little metalcore heart explode every time I listen to them. And we talked about it earlier, but like the first one you hear in game, Undefeatable, and man, woo.
Yes, you get a little bit of I'm Here, which was in marketing, but a little bit on the title screen. I've already talked about how it feels like all of these are supersonic themes, and it may have been because before the full soundtrack got released to streaming, like in the middle of December, I had the little sample soundtrack downloaded that included Undefeatable. I might have listened to that song like 100 times by now.
Man, it's so good.
I love the lyrics. I feel like the lyrics are specifically from the perspective of Supersonic, saying like, this is over. Let me tell you like how this is gonna end. I'm undefeatable. I'm what you get when the stars collide. I've been through this before and I know how it ends, and it's so good. And yeah, I was unfamiliar with Caleb Quinn before this, but I really love their vocals on these. They're powerful and like stand up to the energy of these songs so well.
Like there's a reason why this has turned into the new, Rules of Nature or Devil Trigger online. And people are just mashing it up with stuff.
So going back to the the marketing campaign of the studio videos and all that, when Otani mentioned that like in recording for this game he was using a 7-string guitar, I got so excited because I was just like, ooh, that's new territory, that's awesome. And then so like the funny thing we haven't mentioned yet is that everybody except me played this game like almost on release. I waited a while because I'm frugal. I was waiting for a sale, never happened, so I just but it's worth the $60 in my head at least. So they all had already beaten it. I listened to Undefeatable before playing the game. I legitimately was so surprised at the incorporation of metal screaming. That blew my freaking mind, and I am still so into it. And I'm just like, we have metal screaming in a Sonic game, and it works, and I am so hype. Like,
so glad Sonic finally caught up to that trend.
And like I think as far as Sonic history, this was the right time to like bring in that style of music, because this is such a different game. Like if we heard that in like Forces, I feel like that would have just not meshed well. But this is such a different game. Yeah.
There are people that push back on Infinite's theme, which I like that kind of music, so I think it's fine. The fact that there is also a track featuring the vocalist from Infinite's theme on this as well, that it's like a spiritual successor to that style of music, in a much cooler game, in a much cooler boss fight.
Like I think Find Your Flame might be my favorite of the boss tracks.
It's real good.
It's real good. Like you said, the Metal Gear Reinventions using the super Psy loop on the sword to cut the guy in half. Oh boy. Yeah. But yeah, I love that every Titan battle, like again, like they're all in the similar genre, but also are very unique. Like I would say none of these songs sound like each other in a good way.
So like Undefeatable sounds like in like this current market of music of like late 2022 / early 2023, Undefeatable sounds like the music you would think of if you hear somebody say metalcore. When you go into Find Your Flame, they're all still like similar style, similar genre, but Find Your Flame has more punk rock elements with especially with the drums doing like the 1-2 kind of back and forth of like the bass and the kick drum and the snare drum. And like the good thing is with these standout vocal tracks for the Titans, like I said, it all stays in like the same genre, but they have different flows and different inspirations behind them. Before we started recording this, I was listening to some of the music from the individual people like Kellen Quinn and Tyler Smith and Mary Kirk Holmes.
Not to skip over their performance in I'm Here, but I really appreciate how they are singing at such a high register, but nowhere does their voice crack or go out of tune. That I don't know, that just it hits something in my body with the vocals for I'm Here, that it fills me with the emotions that the song is trying to convey, because the vocals sound so powerfully strained. I would describe them as.
Yeah. The music sounds very true to who these singers are, because like I listened to the song If You Can't Hang by Sleeping with Sirens, because I personally I'm not super familiar with them. I looked on YouTube and the music video has 142 million views, so I was like, okay, that seems like a good place to start. and like it sounds like the music in this music video sounds very much like the music that plays during the boss fights in Sonic Frontier. So I'm glad that when they were recording they had the presence of mind to look for lead vocalists who work within that genre super well, and like they're not trying to force those vocalists to try to sing like a different style. It's just like, you're good at this, we're doing this, please help.
Yeah. And I think I want to say I read something from Otani or the other producers that for like Mary Kirk Holmes, like they heard their band and liked them and like got into contact and said, hey, we're doing a song similar to this, and I think that's pretty cool.
I mean, that's kind of what Jun Sonoe used to do back in the day with like The Adventures and Shadow.
Yeah, like the entire Shadow the Hedgehog soundtrack is just that. Bands I liked.
Don't mess with a good thing.
Yeah. The vocal tracks aren't all just like hardcore metalcore music. We also have Sage's song to her father Eggman, sung by Quinn Barnett, Dear Father.
I mean, it's sweet.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to listen to it on its own. I think I've only listened to it in this game. I guess the only criticism I would levy on it is it is so on the nose.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like an anime ending song.
Yeah, and I guess that doesn't really bother me. I thought the one point, I think you literally said it, Faulerro, the kind of, it sounds a little off kilter, the little humming section within the game where she's remembering. I guess it's not out of tune. I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, I appreciate especially the fact that it plays in the credits right after the final battle is, oh, okay, I see, that is this song's purpose. And yes, it did maybe get me choked up a little bit, but
I still like it a lot better than past attempts to do like the slow kind of ballady songs like My Destiny from Sonic 06.
Yeah, we're going to keep going back to it. I do wonder, you mentioned this as like a bit of an anime ending. Would it have like hit differently if it was sung in Japanese? Like, would it feel different? Like the end, because would it like evoke feelings of the Sonic X ending?
Yes,
yeah, maybe.
That was literally that before you said that was what I thought of, and I was like, yeah, maybe. And then like, well, is that just the dumb weeb version of my brain that is lighting up? So. But it is a very cute song. I don't want to, I don't want to crap on it.
Yeah.
It is very different from the rest, that's for sure.
But that does bring us to the two other ending themes.
Yeah,
which
like
you might miss if you played on hard and not normal. Which we've all heard already.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all very familiar with that one, and it is interesting that, they have a quote-unquote licensed song in there at all. But although
it's funny though, because like we all heard it, we were like, "Oh man, this is fucking great. And then the internet was immediately found out, hey, have you heard the original version? They use the black word.
They sure do.
Fun fact, not One OK Rock's first collaboration with Sega. They did a song for the original release of Like a Dragon Ishin back in 2013.
Wow, okay. I didn't.
Which is not coming back to the remake.
No. They're used up their one OK Rock licensing. Which I like the song, it's great, but I'm not saying this to, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Really seems like it was a late in development. They were like, hey, maybe we should license a cool anime song. Because it is, if you compare the ending cutscenes with the tornado between Vandalize and One Way Dream, like One Way Dream the intro starts at the beginning of that scene, whereas Vandalize does not come in until the credits come back in, and so it's just silent. And, like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just kind of obvious that this was just a marketing thing with a cool song from a band people know.
Yeah.
But it fits in a weird way.
It does.
It does, but I think it's also telling that they left it off the official soundtrack.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got released as its own separate single.
Yeah.
They changed the lyrics, but you can't really have a song on a Sonic game that's original lyrics are.
Yeah. We might get a damn or a hell in a Knuckles level, but not that one.
When Amy was talking about spreading love across the world, this is not what she was talking about.
Good lord.
Which it's also funny in the Sonic Frontiers version, that vocalist pronounces the hell out of that H in head. It's good. I mean, it's good. Yeah. It's a good song.
Yeah. And as a drummer, I can appreciate the fact that like the drummer in Vandalize doesn't he doesn't really open up into like using open hi-hats or the crash cymbals a whole lot, like a lot of standard rock these days, but he's still able to keep the energy up, and that's just really cool. I can appreciate that and give props to that. Yeah. So the final we've already said the title a few times, but the final vocal track that we are talking about today is One Way Dream with vocals by Nathan Sharp, which if you are not familiar with the name, but it sounds familiar, it's also formerly at this point known as Nate Wants to Battle on YouTube. So we have a YouTuber who's really good at singing in a Sonic song. That's pretty cool.
For the second time, because he was also a vocalist on a bunch of tracks in the 30th anniversary concert.
That's right. Yes, he was. Yes.
I think he has replaced the original is my favorite version of Endless Possibility.
Oh yeah, the guy from Bowling for Soup.
I love that they brought in a Sonic YouTuber who really actually legitimately cares about Sonic.
Yes.
Subtle.
No, that is independent of any other Sonic YouTuber out there anyway.
And and also can sing. The dude has a set of pipes. That was the biggest surprise when I remember our mutual friends, we were all streaming the concert, and it pops up with guest vocalist, and that freaking out, and I was like, oh okay, this guy's a known entity, and damn, he can sing.
Yes.
So yes, he sounds great. And I was also embarrassed that I didn't recognize it until people pointed it out. But then I was excited that oh wow, and now he's in, a Sonic game. And,
singing the Sonic team calling out the haters song.
Basically, this is what I was talking about, man. You look at these lyrics and don't tell me that this is a 6-minute recollection of the past,
Yeah, no, Otani has said as much.
Yes, and I, like you said, that's calling out the haters. I look at it as the themes of the game itself, they're reflecting on their legacy, and also how, hey, they pulled it off this time. People like this one.
They said we'd break, they said we'd lose, but here we are. What else is new?
I really like it.
Yeah, man, the music in this game is so good, and we've talked about it a little bit, but The soundtrack for this game, not all 900 songs, thank God, but the soundtrack is available to stream on various platforms. I have it up on YouTube Music right now, and it's currently listing 150 tracks. So, there you go.
It is the longest Sonic soundtrack to date, officially.
That makes sense.
Well, they gave that open world a lot of soundtrack, so to make it not a fun, full experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sonic Frontiers is really good, isn't it?
Man.
Yeah, we liked it.
I have never been more excited for the future of Sonic than I have been after playing this game.
Legitimately, yes.
It's nice to feel that way after a mainline Sonic game, and not just like supplemental material like the comics and TV shows. It's good.
You know, if I had to end it with saying, like, I can only speak for myself. I do think if you're a long-suffering Sonic fan that is not, completely given over to despair, that yes, I would say give this one a try. And Sonic games always go on sale. Like, this one has already been on sale several times for quite a hefty discount.
It was like down from 60 to 40 within the first week.
Yeah, which it is also sold quite well, I believe. Which but I would say if you want like Mania 2, this ain't it. But if you want a new take on a 3D Sonic game that I think is fun, and you really want some good Sonic story, then I would highly recommend it if you're on the fence. I really enjoyed my time. I'm probably going to play through it again several times once that DLC starts coming out.
For sure.
It's just nice, like, to have that feeling of, oh yeah, Sonic's in good hands, but relating to this kind of game, like a big Sonic game. Because, like, the last time we felt this way was actually Mania for me. It's like, oh yeah, it's nice to have people who care about Sonic and know about Sonic be involved in an official big Sonic product. But now we've got that in a game that's big. A game that's big and has, like, big implications to the franchise.
Very big.
Mania's gone. Like, there's still Mania content out there, kinda, but this is the future of Sonic now, and it's a bright future for once.
The fact that they are treating this as a new era of 3D Sonic games, and it's tangentially related, but like people were digging up the fact that like Sega posted positions for like the kind of a producer of Sonic lore whose job is to like
basically collaborate with Tyson, Evan, and Ian on like keeping everything organized for the future.
And others and stuff like that is something they're taking seriously, as as hilarious out of context that sounds. But yeah, it does have me excited that they're gonna do that.
Yeah, you wouldn't get that in Mario. Mario's never really needed it, but
right.
For Sonic,
And the thing that I want to end on is that Sonic Frontiers is another example of a big money-making machine video game franchises that is in a new era of video game development. Because I think one of the really big tipping points was we started with Breath of the Wild, where there's been interviews literally going around saying that like they had new younger developers in who helped flesh out ideas to like totally basically update and sort of remake the Zelda formula. And then we got stuff like Super Mario Odyssey, which is a continuation, but also a really big update to that. We got the new Kirby game, which is, again, a reinvention and a new update to that. We got Metroid Dread. And I know these are a lot of Nintendo games, but even like God of War, that's like the same characters, the same game, but like really different new gameplay style that updates the franchise. And now we have Sonic Frontiers, which is doing that too. It's really cool to say that in the years of 2022 and 2023 and the previous years as well for those games, we're in a legitimately exciting new era of younger developers who are making a name for themselves while also being guided by the original creators like Shigeru Miyamoto and people at Santa Monica Studios who made those groundbreaking games, and we're continuing these in bold, really cool new directions. And it's just cool to see, especially for Sonic, who has had there's no denying long troubled history of up and downs in gaming and other franchises. It's so cool to see this bold new move work, and not only work, but work so well. This is a really cool time to not only be a Sonic fan, but to be a video game fan.
In an industry that is a lot of negativity surrounding it, a lot of valid criticisms, it is nice to be able to pick out that, like you said, that like new blood is getting its chance to shine with projects like this. Woo. It's very cool and very encouraging. Makes me excited as not only as someone who plays video games, but just as someone who likes to appreciate art in that capacity as well.
Yes.
But I think that wraps it up.
Yes.
It does.
Finally, we have reached the end of our discussion of Sonic Frontiers, and so let's plug our socials and everything.
Let's do that.
I am Faulerro. You can find me on all facets of the internet, well, not all of them, but you can find me on Twitter at least at FAULERRO. That's Faulerro.
Woo! Love the jingle. I am RockTheJake. You can find me on the socials at RockTheJake, and you can also find me on Twitch at Mr. RockTheJake. I haven't streamed in a while, but I do legitimately want to get back into that, so keep an eye on that.
You can find me on Twitter at CyberLink420, and that's pretty much it.
That's all he needs, y'all.
And I'm GameBuddy. You can find me around the internet under GameBuddy or GameBuddy123, and my Twitter is Great Job Jeremy. That's GR and the number 8.
And special thanks, as always, goes out to Amy Waters for the use of our theme song from the album Gotta Go Slow. You can check out more of her work on YouTube and Bandcamp. And please remember to subscribe, review, share, all those funny little things that help us get out there as we face new frontiers of our Sonic podcast. We already made that joke. Anyway, but next time, as it's appropriate that we've just finished talking about a game that has lots of references to Sonic Adventure, and for our next episode, we are actually going back to Sonic Adventure. We're revisiting Sonic Adventure to get into the parts that we didn't talk about, because we were trying to keep our podcast short. Imagine doing that while talking about a Sonic game. We sure didn't this time. But yeah, it's appropriate that we're going back to Sonic Adventure for the anniversary episode of The Hill Is Always Greener, our first official year of doing this podcast, or at least releasing it to the public.
Woo. Yep, we're revisiting Sonic Adventure with new experience in the art form of podcasting.
Yeah, we're actually just going to get into it this time, because last time we were just talking about, like, oh, it was a rocky transition, and everyone loves talking about that, and all the changes and differences to Sonic in 3D, but now we're going to talk about it as a video game.
What?
I'm excited to do that. Yeah, I know, right?
Wild.
But that's next time, and I hope you join us next time as for our anniversary episode. But until then, I have been Faulerro.
I've been RockTheJake.
I've been CyberLink.
And I'm GameBuddy. And hold up, I've heard all this mad ranting before.
Our podcast in a nutshell.
Yep.
That's from the Frontiers prequel comic. See,
get a load of that.
Get a load of that.
Yeah.